Joe Rogan Podcast. Check it out.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Train by day, Joe Rogan Podcast by night, all day.
Okay, hello, Temple.
How's it going, man?
What's going on, buddy?
I'm so excited. It's been like a year and a half.
Nice to see you. Last night was fucking chaos. That you can't have like 10 people with microphones in a room in a trailer.
It was good though because Alex would just start screaming, if too many people talked at once. So he was acting like, that buffer. Oh, thanks for coming, man.
It was fun.
It ended up being huge. We had like over 1 million people watch. And
Really?
It was a cacophony of crazy voices. And I don't know if anyone learned anything, but it was fun.
It was just seeing Alex sitting next to Blair White and then you and me and Luke, and this is wild. It was
man.
Very fun.
Yeah,
Very
but seriously, thanks for coming, Dad.
Nope.
When it came together accidentally because one by one everyone wanted to come on the show on the same day. I felt bad for Blair White because we had originally booked her, and then at the last minute, I can't remember who it was, probably Luke. He was like, "Have you asked Joe?" And I was like, "He's got a comedy show. He's too busy." But if you don't ask, the answer is always no. And then Joe's like, "Yeah, I'll come by. It'd be great." And
Yeah, I worked it in. We got in. I had a podcast before then, so we were with my friend Ben, and we were hammered. So we had been drinking and smoking weed, and we went straight over to there. So it was silly. It was
right on,
quite
man.
Silly.
So what's going on?
Well, we're sitting here waiting for this Rittenhouse verdict, right? Which is apparently going to happen today, maybe. And what's interesting to me is that people are framing this as a race thing
From the beginning.
Well, and then many people are realizing now, because they're paying attention to the trial, that he actually shot white people.
Yeah.
Like, there's many people that thought that this Kyle Rittenhouse kid had shot black protesters, when in fact it was white Antifa rioters. And then if you look at their record, they were all criminals. Like, the people he shot.
They were. That's a tough point. Joseph Rosenbaum, and I don't know how graphic you want to get, because do you know this guy's history? The first guy who attacked Kyle who died, do you know his history?
Yes, I do. But go ahead. Good graphic.
He anally raped children. I believe he anally raped one little boy, and he performed oral on several little boys. Apparently, he would try and date single mothers to sexually abuse their children. That was when he was a teenager, and then he went to prison. I believe it was for 15 years. Now, the details here get murky. I don't know exactly. They say he got out of a mental hospital that morning. This guy was not Antifa. He was not Black Lives Matter, at least in my opinion. I think this is a guy who was suicidal. He was screaming, "Shoot me, N-word, shoot me, N-word," over and over again. He attacked a kid with a gun who was screaming, "Friendly, friendly, friendly," and running away, and then tried grabbing it. And then within .739 of a second, Rittenhouse let off 4 shots as Rosenbaum was reaching for his gun, as testified by Richie McGinnis, and he crumpled to the ground. And that's when these other guys, the whole mob, Kyle runs for the police, and then the rest of the mob starts running after him like, "Get him, cranium that boy, get him, get him, get him." Anthony Huber is an interesting one because he's the dude who hit him with the skateboard twice. People don't know this because you'll hear from the conservatives like, "Oh, he was hitting him with the skateboard," and you see that photo of Rittenhouse on the ground. Apparently, he hit Rittenhouse from behind with the skateboard before Rittenhouse fell. He grabbed the gun. Rittenhouse fired 1 shot right into his heart, killed him instantly. Gage Grosskreutz, the next guy, charged at Rittenhouse with a gun in his hand. And you want to know where it gets really crazy? Grosskreutz testified on the stand that he told police, and he believed, Kyle Rittenhouse said, "I'm working with the police," as he was running down the street, because Gage Grosskreutz was running alongside him. Grosskreutz runs back, turns around and runs towards him, pulling his Glock 27 out from his waistband. That means Gage Grosskreutz, if he's telling the truth, and he's probably not, believed Kyle Rittenhouse was a police informant or in some way working with cops, so he should draw his Glock 27 on this kid and run up to him, gun drawn. I mean, that's a crazy prospect. That's not someone.
He's the guy who got shot in the bicep?
Shot in the bicep, yeah. This is not a guy who was trying to stop a mass shooter. It's a guy who testified, "I was trying to, attack a police informant or a cop or something like that." That's in the trial.
Why do you think this has become a race thing? Is it because it was a Black Lives Matter protest?
Man, this is crazy.
Well, let's call it what it is. Is it a protest or is it a riot?
It's a riot.
It's a riot, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it seemed like I mean, what was the scene? Were they lighting things on fire? Like, what was the scene?
Well, so I watched a lot of videos about it, same as many people, but I also interviewed 7 different witnesses. We've had them on our show right afterwards and throughout the year, and we have a collection of all this footage from all these guys. I mean, this was a pretty serious riot. When people say, like, why did Kyle Rittenhouse come out? Why did he have to have that gun? Well, buildings had been burned down, but there was a viral video of a guy who looks, I think he's in his 70s. I think I could be getting the details wrong, so you guys can fact check me on this one, but he had like a mattress store that was on fire. And so he rushes to it as people are just running through the store and causing havoc, and he tries to stop them and grab them, and someone goes up behind him with a rock and bashes him over the back of the head, leaving him laying on the ground bleeding out. I remember seeing that video and just being like, holy shit, dude. So you have to imagine, I mean, you're a kid, this Kyle Rittenhouse, he wants to be a cop, he wants to be an EMT, and you hear the police aren't doing anything about it. Literally, the police were just staying far away as things burned. Then you hear that his friend Nick Smith was offered money to protect the businesses. So they said, we need to get a crew together to defend these businesses. And Kyle's 17. He had a legal gun. The gun was legal. The judge ruled this. And everybody...
So explain that, because I thought he wasn't old enough to carry.
So in Wisconsin, there's an exemption for rifles and shotguns if you're 16 or 17. It is... believed the exemption is so that you can hunt,
right?
But it's not specifically about hunting.
So open carry is in Wisconsin if you're above 18. Is that what it is?
I don't know about open carry or
concealed carry, but the ability to carry a weapon publicly, because this is publicly, right?
Right.
And so even though he's 17, there's an exemption that he's allowed to carry that weapon because of the fact that it's a rifle.
It's a rifle greater than, I think, 26 inches.
So if he was carrying a pistol, what he was doing was illegal, but since he was carrying a rifle, it's legal. So because people kept saying that he was carrying it illegally because he was 17, so that's not in fact true.
Not true. And all the legal experts who were being honest about this from the first day this happened immediately came out and said he was legally carrying that rifle. But I guess... for the same reason people claimed Kyle Rittenhouse shot black people, they claimed the gun was illegal.
I never heard anybody say that he shot black people, but I think people just assumed that he shot black people. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I don't think I don't think most people are even aware of the details of this case, especially the people that are, which is really disturbing, the people that are commenting on it in the media. Like Joe Scarborough got a bunch of shit wrong.
Fired off 60 rounds.
I mean, he just got a bunch of shit wrong. Like so many of the details are wrong. Like he's a professional news guy. That's what he does. He's on, what is he, MSNBC?
MSNBC Morning Joe.
I mean... how the fuck does he must have fact checkers and...
You want to hear some shit? I've been watching the trial live stream nonstop from start to finish.
Yeah.
I've been covering mostly this and reading legal analysis from a variety of lawyers. There was a moment where it was really, really bad for the prosecution. One of their star witnesses, one of the men who... Gage Grosskreutz, he's the guy who ran up with the Glock on Kyle Rittenhouse, testified that it wasn't until he advanced on Kyle with his gun pointed at him that Kyle shot him.
Right.
What did MSNBC report? What did NPR report? That he testified he raised his hands, and with his hands up, Kyle shot him.
Yeah, what the fuck are they doing? Are they just lying, or are they doing it because... Are they doing it for ratings? Are they doing it because they're misinformed? Like, what are they doing?
I'll try and be as fair as possible. Some have suggested that maybe... Gage Grosskreutz said, my hands were up. He did say this. My hands were up. And then they write, Gage Grosskreutz says his hands were up as he was being shot. They sort of just did a bad job. But I don't give these people the benefit of the doubt when, I'm watching this trial, same as everybody else, and within the span of 5-10 minutes, he says it was, the defense asked him, you pointed your gun and then he shot you, and Gage goes, correct. If it was a mistake, they could have issued a correction and said, oh, he actually testified he advanced on him with a gun pointed towards him.
Right.
So I have to wonder if it's a cult, it's ideological, it's the refusal to accept you were wrong and to perpetuate the narrative of your groupthink.
I don't even know if it's that or if they're just doing that because that's the way they get people to watch and pay attention, to reinforce this narrative that would be the most inflammatory and the most outrageous narrative, which is that this guy is just on a rampage and we're going to let him off because he's white. Like this is...
You know what I think? I think over the past several years, these media organizations, they found they made a lot of money hating on, quote unquote, the far right and Donald Trump. And so they embraced that narrative.
Yeah.
What ends up happening is your core audience who actually wants news eventually grows wise to the fact that you're just spewing out a narrative, and they leave. If you have a viewership that's 80%, moderate news interested people, and the only thing you say is Trump is bad and the far right is bad, eventually you'll lose most of those moderates and retain a very left ideological group. Now, NPR, CNN, MSNBC, that's their core audience.
Right.
If they come out now and say something honest like, it looks like Kyle Rittenhouse was acting in self-defense, they're going to start losing even them, and they're not going to get back the people they lied to.
That's interesting.
So it's almost like they dug themselves into a hole they can't get out of. But to be fair, Chris Hayes did say it's starting to look like an acquittal in all honesty. Yeah.
But is he saying that because the judge is biased and it's wrong, or is he saying it because we're looking at the actual evidence? Because the actual evidence itself, look, I'm not exactly sure that this is a good thing that, the news lies about all this shit. I mean, I think it's terrible, right? I think it's terrible that we can't trust them. But I want to know, where is it coming from? Are they doing it? Are they being deceptive on purpose? Or are they misinformed? Are they where's it coming? Is it the producers not understand what the fuck is going on? Did they want to flavor the narrative that they think that their core audience, what you were talking about, the hardcore lefties, are going to want to hear, and that's how they need to capture them? I mean, what are they doing exactly?
I think that's it. When I worked for that, and I probably told you this the last time I was here, when I worked for that, for Fusion, the ABC News Univision company, the president of the company said in multiple meetings, we're here to side with the audience. And I had a private meeting with him where he told me that. He said, we're going to side with the audience, and our audience are young progressives, so we're here to basically side with them. That's how he framed it. And I asked him, does that mean if there is a factual news story that would be offensive or upsetting to our audience, we won't report it? And he said, yes, I think that's fair.
Wow.
I take it to a darker place where it's basically lie and omit. And I think it's because the guys who run the business, they don't know anything about news. And I'm not trying to, I think it's actually to their defense to say this. A business guy says, we need to bring in enough money to pay everyone's salary so they can do this work. People want to hear the news and the news that's important to them. So we make sure we're siding with them and getting the audience what they need and want. But that goes to a dark place when your motive is clicks and revenue instead of passion and principle. I think most of these companies are realizing that with the internet, with new media, there's millions of different news outlets people can choose from. They don't need to choose you. So what CNN, MSNBC, and these other outlets do is they choose their niche market. They decide this is the audience we're going to side with because we can't side with everybody. If we come out, we say Trump's not that bad, we lose the left. But if we come out, let's just pick one of them.
Right.
That's what they've done.
I feel like the news, CNN in particular, is just geared for people at the airport. You know what I mean?
They canceled that contract. It's over.
Really?
Yeah, the CNN airport stuff ended recently.
Good.
Yeah.
It's fucking propaganda. I never had that opinion of CNN until this whole horse dewormer thing with me.
That crazy,
I was
right?
You guys are out of your fucking mind.
Yo,
not only that, it was so obviously a lie and repeated over and over and over and over again, and they kept using the horse term, where it's I have heartworm medication for my dog that I got. It's just a standard heartworm medication. I don't even know why we got it. He didn't have heartworms. I think it was something we have, the preventative that we have just laying around. And I looked at it after all this bullshit was over, and I was like, what's in here? It was ivermectin.
Yeah.
Ivermectin's in there. I'm like, this is crazy. I had no idea that this was laying around. I never even purchased it. Someone else in my family purchased it.
Did you know that this is true? There's actually witnesses who have said Brian Stelter was drinking a corrosive battery chemical, a chemical used for cleaning corrosion off batteries. He was actually seen later cleaning a drinking engine coolant.
So
I'm talking about water,
Coca-Cola
by
in
the way.
water?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's the game they play.
Well, it's not even the game. It's just lying. But the thing about it, what was weird is how coordinated it was, and how dumb it was that they were doing it to me. Do you not know that I can say that that's a lie? Do you not know that I have more people listening to me than you do? What are you doing?
They're not scared of getting sued.
But it's not even just they're not scared of getting sued. They're not scared of being publicly shamed for being full of shit. Like, it doesn't have any effect on them. But Don Lemon is the only dummy that actually commented on it. You know, when Sanjay Gupta, actually, we should be clear that it is not a lie, that it's a horse dewormer.
And Sanjay Gupta said, that's true.
No, that's not what he said. He said after that, and it's also not cleared for use by the FDA. And he said, that's true. That's what he said.
Right.
So he tried to talk about it again and talk about the horse dewormer part of it, about ivermectin being used for humans, and then Don Lemon steamrolled him. So it's not true. So, like,
but you did see that Sanjay wrote in an op-ed he was scared you were going to jump the table.
He was trying to be funny. He's not a fucking socially, fluid guy. Or, he's not. He's a fucking neurosurgeon. Right?
Yeah, I can respect
he's a
that.
guy that works 100 hours a week, and he's actually deals with real patients. He's a really nice guy. Like, Sanjay's a very nice guy, but he's a little socially naive, I would say.
It's just hard to give them the benefit of the doubt,
I don't think of him as them. I think of him as a medical correspondent. He's a legitimate doctor. I think he can absolutely be led in astray and in a bad way, especially when you're doing those short clips, like when you call in to CNN. Like, he's somewhere remotely looking into a camera, they're in his ear, and then Don Lemon or whoever the fuck else it is on the other line.
Well,
it's not the same.
I had the privilege of being going through a mini saga of what you went through because you helped out when me and my crew got sick, and it was actually really interesting for me to experience this because I knew they would lie about me. I even in my first video back after I got sick, I was like, I knew the media was going to say it was horse dewormer or whatever, but I actually wasn't. Like, I was actually fairly critical, and I have been always, of ivermectin, of the I forgot what it's called. There's like a contrarian. It's a reference to being contrarian, where you just believe something is right because the establishment thinks it's wrong or whatever. And the media now still tries to claim that I've been gung ho on ivermectin when I've actually been either neutral to slightly critical.
Well, the evidence is not negative towards ivermectin, but it is muddy. And the reason why it's muddy is there's not like real solid funded studies that make much sense. But they do know that it stops viral replication in vitro. We do know that they've treated at least 100, if not 200 Congress people who were sick pre-medicate or pre-vaccine. They treated them with ivermectin. We do know that in what is it called? Uttar Pradesh in India, they treated everyone with ivermectin. They handed out ivermectin to all these households as a preventative measure, and they essentially cured COVID in this one country, or it's one state rather, in India.
Now, there's an interesting point that just came up today. I can't remember the guy's name. It might be Scott Alexander. I'm not sure. And they found a correlation between worms and parasites and curing COVID. So one of the hypotheses it's Uttar Pradesh, right?
Yeah.
People there have a high propensity for parasite infestation. And so if you've got worms and your immune system's being bogged down or strained, you get sick, you're more likely to die and have a serious reaction. You take ivermectin, you cure those worms, you have your immune system is more robust. I'm not saying it discredits everything.
But no. It stops viral replication. Like,
right,
it's not as simple as like you don't have worms anymore, so your immune system is stronger. Because there's plenty of people that don't have worms that have an immune system that gets wrecked by COVID. What they're showing is that there's a direct correlation between taking ivermectin and having positive results. The problem is so many, like my friend, who was it that went over maybe was it Peter Attia? But he was saying that essentially the problem is that the studies were so different. Like, some of them were taking it in prophylaxis, so they're taking it as a preventative measure. Some of it were taking it in the early days of the COVID infection. Some of them were taking it in the late days of the COVID infection. But here's the thing. What you took that's undeniable, what I took that's undeniable, is monoclonal antibodies.
Yeah.
And this was when I talked about the stuff that I took, I read off a laundry list of things, and all they concentrated on is ivermectin. And they said I was promoting ivermectin. This is clearly some sort of a campaign to discredit ivermectin. And if you read the critical care, the frontline critical COVID care website, or their you could follow their Twitter feed as well. They talk about, and Dr. Pierre Corey has an article about how the FDA, they targeted ivermectin. They actually targeted it as a drug to single out as being ineffective. while they don't say a goddamn thing about remdesivir. Remdesivir is something that they prescribe for COVID early on that causes kidney failure.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You know, I don't like to believe in coordinated campaigns, grand schemes or anything like that. But this is why I was basically bringing it up, because even right here I'm like, well, there's a possibility. Worms. I'm kind of a middle of the road guy. I tweeted monoclonal antibodies saved me, in my opinion. This is and the NAD plus was that popped me back up. And what are they writing about? There's a new article where they're like, far-right Tim Pool is the poster boy of ivermectin. But this is why I think...
They only do that to get people to click on things. And by the way, you're not... How the fuck are you far-right? you're so not... It's such a lie. Make sure that what I'm saying about remdesivir is true, because I'm 90% sure that they stopped prescribing remdesivir for COVID, and I believe the problem was people were having kidney problems.
I feel like when I see articles making those claims, it's about discrediting ivermectin.
Yeah,
because
exactly.
even Me Too say, I think it was the monoclonal antibodies, not ivermectin, and then they write Tim Pool ivermectin.
Right. I'm sure I'm sure everything I took helped. I'm sure the NAD helped. I'm sure the IV vitamins helped. I'm sure the monoclonal antibodies helped. I'm sure all of it helped. But all they concentrated on was ivermectin. Did you find anything about remdesivir? Oh, here we go. Okay.
There
Lung
it is.
and kidney damage caused by COVID-19, not antiviral drug. Lungs filling up with fluid and kidney failure are actually side effects of remdesivir.
That's the claim. That's the claim.
Okay, claim. Who's it? Where is this from?
The AP.
AP? Yeah. AP's assessment, false. Critical COVID-19, not the drug remdesivir, is known to cause fluid in the lungs. Okay, but
I don't think that's
read
true.
something about remdesivir specifically causing kidney problems. The problem with all these fucking things is you never know who's full of shit and who's not.
But wait. I've never
failure.
heard that.
Okay, go to that. That's a PubMed. There it is. Remdesivir and acute renal failure. A potential study safety signal from disproportionately analysis of the WHO safety database. Okay, so now we're talking.
You want to scroll down to conclusion?
So this is a PubMed study. So this is what I'm going to buy into.
No conclusion, just the abstract, huh?
That's
Well, so I don't know. We don't know what it says.
See if you can find something else, Jamie.
But I will say I've never heard of renal failure from COVID. That's insane. I mean, if we were talking about COVID-19 can kill your kidneys, I think people would be freaking out a little bit more.
Maybe it kills kidneys in some people. I mean, it has different reactions in different people. Some people lose their sense of smell. Some people don't feel anything from that. It's a fucking weird disease, man. It's weird.
Oh, I won't get too personal in the details, but the symptoms that I had, like my veins felt like they were being stabbed. Like every vein in my body it's hard to explain.
Your veins felt like they were being stabbed.
Yeah, this is the worst. So look, when I had the flu, I used to describe it. The flu is the worst thing I've ever experienced in terms of an illness. I was 18. I'm sitting on my couch, shaking, shivering, pale. I lost 10 pounds like in 3 days. Just like it was bad, the flu. So when I got COVID, it was a Wednesday. I felt fine. And I didn't know I had it because, we had a scare, but we had 4 negative tests. So we were like, it's probably a cold going around. It's not COVID.
And the negative tests you get with those the over-the-counter kind?
Over-the-counter.
Yeah.
And
those are wrong a lot.
Yep. So the next day, that night I wake up in the middle of the night drenched in sweat, feeling like I'm getting sick. And I'm like, okay, I'm not going to be able to work tomorrow. But it was from 0 to 11. From like that Wednesday night, I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. So Friday, I decided I was going to call the doctor and see if maybe there's something I need to be doing. Maybe I need sunlight, vitamin D, whatever they might recommend for this. And I'm like, look, I'm healthy, 35. There's no way this is going to get me down. And the doctor said, this is where it gets crazy. The doctor said to me, I'll give you the short version. We were talking. They said, look, we don't prescribe anything for this. You can come in for some tests. And I said, is that necessary if you're not going to prescribe me anything? And they were like, it's a virus. Go home and go to sleep. I said, I know it's controversial, but has ivermectin, been something you guys have looked into? And they said, ivermectin, this is what they said to me, ivermectin has been shown to help many people who have COVID. And then they stopped. And then I said, okay, is that something you guys are prescribing? And they go, well, the FDA has not approved it. And then they stop. And then I say, oh, so is that something that I have to ask for? Or like, is that something you recommend? And they said, we will not prescribe it to you. And I went, okay, but I'll be honest. I wasn't, I like I said, I was like, I don't know if ivermectin's the thing or not, and maybe I should just go home, go to bed. That was Friday. By Friday night, it had escalated so dramatically, the pain, the shortness of breath, and I was like, it's getting worse. If it gets worse tonight, and the nights are when it is the worst, I'm going to be in the hospital. And so that's why I was like, I need to ask somebody like who's experienced this. I hit you up and I was like, I don't know how sick you were. I don't know what ideas you had. Long story short, because I don't want to get into too much of the private details for me and my girlfriend and the people who got sick, but the next day I went and got the monoclonal antibodies, NAD, and the vitamin drip, painkillers, and ibuprofen. Like I was on drugs, man. My fever went down. My temperature went to normal. I felt fine, but that night was the worst I have ever experienced any kind of illness. I was hallucinating. I am not exaggerating. I was delirious. I was wandering around in absolute agony. 9 out of 10 in terms of pain. I've had kidney stones before.
This is before or after the monoclonal antibodies?
But it was only
before it kicked in.
Right. This is only a few hours after the entire treatment. So it's in my body, but I haven't yet begun to, it's probably beginning the process
So essentially, you got it at the right time. Because if you
yeah.
didn't get it then, you were probably going downhill fast.
I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep.
Yeah.
And I don't know exactly why. I know they say Asians have more ACE2 receptors, and I'm part Asian, so that might play a factor. Other people got the sniffles. But when I say I was delirious, I kid you not. Like waking dreams, walking around, just out of my mind. But at 4 a.m., it was like all of a sudden I wasn't sick anymore. And I'm in my living room and I'm looking around, and the NAD kicks in, and everything is crystal clear all of a sudden. And I'm like, I almost freaked out how my vision just was, HD vision was crazy. And then I sit down on my couch and I'm just thinking to myself, I'm like, no, I'm still sick. I feel fine. And so then I lay back, I put on House MD, and it's 4 a.m. and I'm just awake, fall asleep like a baby. Well, not like a baby because babies cry all night, but like a rock, boom. Wake up in the morning, get up, and I'm just like,
it's over.
It's over.
Yeah.
I look out the window, and I think this is the NAD. I see all the leaves, I see all the trees, and I'm like, what the fuck? It's just amazing. It was incredible.
Well, I'm glad you called me. I'm glad we talked about it. I'm glad I gave you the protocol that I followed, and I'm glad it worked for you. And it's the same thing that I told to Aaron Rodgers. And it's the only time, we talked about this yesterday, but it's true. It's the only time I can ever recall, where a friend can say, hey, you got this disease that I have it now. What did you do to get better? And I could say, oh, I did this, that, and this. And then that's controversial.
But you know what was the best part?
Somehow or another, me telling you what to take and it working is controversial, which is fucking crazy.
My girlfriend loves this. You posted that video from the Australian sketch or whatever of the guy, dying, and she's like, it's an EpiPen. He's like, what's in it? And then he goes, call Joe. And my girlfriend watches that, and she's like, you called Joe. And I was like, I did. But you're right. It's like
that's it was a propaganda video on some goofy sketch show where they were saying, what does Joe Rogan think? Like while this guy's dying and not willing to take an EpiPen.
Right. Yeah. So, but it was like kind of ironic that but like you said, look, we're friends, and so when I knew you were sick, I knew you had a you had this regimen done or whatever. I was
sick for a day.
Man,
literally, I was sick for one day. One day, and then I got the monoclonal antibodies and all the IV drips and everything like that. And the next day, I felt pretty good. And then 2 days later, on Wednesday, so I'm sick on Monday. On Wednesday, I made that video that went viral. And then by the time Friday rolled around, Thursday, I was getting negative tests on over-the-counter tests. And then Friday, it was negative on standard tests.
I got the treatment on Saturday, but then I didn't take the test until Friday, and I was negative. So maybe it was earlier. I don't know. Yeah,
maybe. But the point is, the next day, I was working out again. I mean, I felt fine. 2 days after that, I did 10 rounds in the bag. Like, I literally felt fine. Like,
me too.
I caught it early. And also, I exercise all the time. I work out all the time. I take vitamins every day. I eat well. I watch my health. And that's the difference. And this is something that people, for whatever reason, they want a one-size-fits-all approach to COVID. And
well, there's actually, I guess, big news on that. The vaccine mandate was just suspended outright by OSHA.
Well, it's not legal.
Right.
It's unconstitutional. So to be able to say, now here's the problem. Joe Biden, in his fucking infinite dementia, has decided to tell people to ignore that, and you should still enforce the mandate. Now, the problem with that is if these companies do that and people get vaccine injured, and they will. Some people will. It's not a large percentage, but some people are going to suffer some sort of a vaccine injury. Those people now will have the door open to sue the company.
Will they, though?
Yes, they will. They won't have the door open to sue the vaccine manufacturers,
Right.
but they will have the door open to sue the company.
Do you know who Pete Parada is?
No.
Drummer of The Offspring. I believe he's their second drummer. He was kicked out of the band. He was fired because he had Guillain-Barré syndrome and could not get the vaccine.
Right.
So when I was a kid, The Offspring was my favorite band. I can play a bunch of their songs, all their big hits. And Ron Welty was their first drummer, so I'm a fan of this band. And then Pete Parada came in, I think this was in the early 2000s, and he plays with them for over a decade, almost 2 decades, or however long it's been. I'm not entirely sure when he joined the band. They fired him because he's medically unable to get a vaccine.
Yeah.
And it's like remorseless. And then
I don't know if you're right. I think part of the problem is the deal that he has with the promoters and the venues. Like, you have to be vaccinated for
Right.
a lot of these venues. That's what it is. So if he was non-vaccinated, and again, it's not logical, right? If he's non-vaccinated and he went to these places, they might kick him out and not allow him to perform.
Well,
'Cause
New York
there's
has
places I can't perform.
New York has an exemption for performers.
Yeah, I went there.
Yeah.
They tried to make an exemption against my exemption. Because I went there and I did Madison Square Garden, and then afterwards a senator introduced a bill specifically with my name attached to it, saying people like Joe Rogan should not be able to come into our state and into our city and be unvaccinated and perform in New York City.
Wow, man.
Fucking
well,
twats.
But going back to what Biden was saying with the White House, where it was the deputy press secretary who said, yes, the courts have suspended this, but proceed anyway. Now OSHA, I believe it was yesterday, issued an official statement on their website. Due to the Fifth Circuit Court ruling putting a stay, we have suspended all implementation and enforcement of the vaccine mandate.
Well, they have to. I mean, it's clearly unconstitutional. And then when you take into account the fact that so many people do have natural immunity and that natural immunity is more effective, it's better for you. The CDC was actually forced to admit recently that they do not have recorded cases of some. No, I'll give you the exact specifics of this. I'll send it to you, Jamie, because it's an interesting statement, like what they said.
Yeah, it was something like people who've recovered from COVID have never transmitted or something.
Yes, they said, but I don't know if that's true, though. See, there's the thing. It's like there's a big difference between something being true and something not being on record, right? So it says the CDC does not recognize natural immunity. So a lawyer asked them under Freedom of Information Act to provide cases where someone recovered from COVID, got infected again, and then transmitted it. And the CDC's response was, we did not find any such case. But that doesn't mean that hasn't happened. It just means it hasn't been recorded. Because a lot of these cases are not being recorded. Right. And how many people are getting COVID and giving it to people and they're not recording that? It's a lot. A lot of them are not recording it.
Well, let's talk about some of these facts that come up with the vaccine mandates. We hear a lot that we've always had mandates, which is actually not true. It's a technicality. We have mandates at schools for kids, but public school is optional. You can take your kid to a private school or homeschool, and there's medical and religious exemptions. And they like to cite this ruling from 1905 in the Supreme Court, where the Supreme Court ruled that you could mandate someone get a vaccine, but if the penalty was a $5 fine. A guy said, I won't pay it, and they said, harumph. And then they sued him saying he owes us the money for not getting this vaccine. Under the pretext of this ruling, I forget the name of it, they actually said if the government has the right to mandate medical procedures, we can sterilize invalids, we can sterilize dullards. And they actually, I believe, tens of thousands of women got sterilized under that pretext. So since then, we've been like, hey, maybe that's not a good idea. The government can mandate a permanent, irreversible medical procedure.
What does the vaccine have to do with sterilizing people? Why are they connected?
The argument, I guess, was there was a smallpox outbreak in the early 1900s, and it was in Massachusetts. I think it was in Boston. They said everyone has to get the vaccine for smallpox. And this Swedish guy says, you can't make me do this. They said, well, then we're going to fine you $5, which is the equivalent to $150 today. He says, I'm not going to pay it. You can't make me pay it. They sue him. They go to court. The Supreme Court says, you've got to pay the fine. But he was never barred from public accommodation. He was never kicked out of he was just told, if you're not going to do it, you got to pay a few bucks.
Right.
But under their ruling, It essentially argued the medical procedures can be mandated when necessary. I'm not,
See, the problem is that this vaccine is not really a vaccine. It's only a vaccine by definition. They're calling it a vaccine. It is a gene treatment, and that's why it doesn't last. It literally only lasts a few months. That's why you have to get boosters. I mean, this is the whole premise behind all the boosters and all this stuff. Literally the best thing that someone could do is get vaccinated and then get COVID, because the vaccine protects you from serious injury, serious damage from COVID, and then you get the sickness, and then you have the real robust immunity that comes naturally. The fact that natural immunity is superior, but yet it's not recognized in California, where you have to vaccine to do everything except go to a grocery store now. It's in LA.
Jeez.
LA is a fucking hot mess right now.
Have you seen Austria?
It's really bad. Yeah, Austria's crazy.
You can't leave your house.
Well, if you're unvaccinated.
Right.
If you're vaccinated, you have full range. It's just coercion. In Slovenia, they're forcing people to get a vaccine if you want to get gas. You have to show a vaccine card to pump gas. It's all a hustle.
But
it's all the vaccine companies and the manufacturers influencing these politicians, the politicians then making these decisions based on the influence that these pharmaceutical drug companies have over them, and that's the only reason why they would do this. Otherwise, you could test people for antibodies. We tested you for antibodies today. It takes 30 seconds.
Yeah.
It literally takes 30 seconds. I have a video of me doing it.
I guess the question is, which nightmare dystopia is this? Is it 1984 or is it Brave New World?
It's a new one. It's a new one that's based entirely on the influence that enormously profitable pharmaceutical companies have over politicians.
You saw that video where it's like, the news brought to you by Pfizer.
Yeah. I put it on my Instagram. It's on my Instagram. Did you find anything about remdesivir?
Just the same stuff. I mean,
But so that one PubMed article about renal failure. But I guarantee you I read something that was talking about high instances of kidney failure due to remdesivir, and they were actually talking about the mechanism involved in kidney failure, and that was one of the reasons why they stopped prescribing it. It was one of the earliest prescribed drugs.
I found stuff about that. I found stuff about kidney failure, but when it comes to the COVID-19 and mixing those things, like adding that to it, nothing was found to be proven.
But you found things on kidney failure and remdesivir.
Correct. There's even outcomes of COVID-19 among patients with end-stage renal disease on remdesivir, and at the end of this, it says like there's no big difference between the people that were on it and the people that were not on it.
It's so hard to tell.
It is weird that remdesivir kind of fell out of focus because it was a big deal.
Not just fell out of focus. Like literally, it's been silenced. Like you don't hear a peep about it. But that was one of the things that Fauci was touting very early on.
So isn't what do they say? They say ivermectin is a protease inhibitor. Is that what it is? And now Merck, who manufactures large quantities of ivermectin, has announced they have their own protease inhibitor to go to market.
Well, Merck was the original inventor of ivermectin. Merck was the original distributor and the manufacturer of it, but it became a generic drug. That's the problem with ivermectin. The problem with ivermectin is literally anybody can make it, and you make it for like 30 cents a dose. It's not profitable. So the problem is if you don't have a patent on it and it's not profitable, then there's no incentive whatsoever for these companies to say like, hey, forget about all this billions and billions of dollars that we're making off of this stuff. We got this shit for you that's generic and you can just take it. Yeah. That just shows you that this is a for-profit endeavor. And the amount of profit that's been generated by these pharmaceutical drug companies during this crisis from selling vaccines is fucking crazy, which is why it's terrifying that they're now trying to give it to children.
Yeah.
And they're trying to say the children need it when they don't. They don't need it. The children, they keep saying 700 children have died from COVID. The children that have died from COVID, without exception, any that I've read, almost all of them, let's say that to be safe, almost all of them had severe comorbidities. They had leukemia, they had cancer, there was something seriously wrong with them, and they died of COVID. They were amazingly obese, whatever it was. It's not like a drug. It's not a disease that is very dangerous for most healthy young kids. It's not.
Did you see that there's a big scandal where I think it was Walgreens and a few other pharmacies were giving hundreds of children adult-sized doses?
Yes. Well, these kids are fucked, because these kids have like serious heart palpitations now, and
What's that?
It's just-
It's really hard to know what's true when, and we're fucked. The media lies. We know they lie. They lie way too much.
If they don't lie, they get things wrong for sure.
Exactly. Now, I look at when I do my show, I use mainstream media sources all the time, but I have to dig up to like 10 and find the source material. Where did it come from, and do I trust it? It's not easy, and the average person can't do it. But I'm hearing rumors about like all these football players who have had like heart incidents or events they call it, where they
Soccer players. There's a lot of soccer players.
Did I say football?
You did say football.
Oh, okay, sorry, I meant
Same
European.
thing.
Yeah, European football.
Because it's like an
Right.
international thing.
Right.
And someone sent me this viral video of, it's like a collage of all these news reports. I've seen videos like this before. And so I'm like, I don't know if people made these fake stories up, but I Google them and I end up finding the exact articles. And there's a large amount of these, soccer players who have just like fallen down on the field and like been carried out and stuff like that.
Well,
I don't
for
know what that's
some-
from though.
Well, for some people, it causes myocarditis and pericarditis. That's a fact. For some
Do you
people,
remember when it
does.
started back in January? There was a bunch of the videos of people just falling over in the street in China.
Yeah.
I
That's
never
sort of
saw
like how
those.
this started.
I never
Whatever
saw
the
those.
fuck
Yep.
happened to people falling over in the street?
Yeah,
That
well,
never
maybe,
kept
but I mean, the
happening.
thing about athletes is more interesting because these athletes obviously are in tip-top Magoo shape, and then they're running around this
Well, if you're doing a
field
soccer players,
that's doing what? That's what I'm saying.
No, I know, but soccer players are known for faking injuries and getting carried off.
No,
the
no,
field.
no,
So,
no,
you
no,
could smash cut.
no,
You could edit
Jamie,
videos
Jamie.
to look weird.
No, but Jimmy,
Yeah.
they're falling down as they're
Yeah.
running, like they're like collapsing.
Well, there's
and
a video
having
where-
heart attacks. They're taking them to the hospital. It's just like this is not. It's not speculation.
And there's a better example. There's a professional mountain biker, I think. Have you heard of this story? He made an Instagram video saying that he got pericarditis from the vaccine and it ended his career. And then he got attacked so relentlessly for that. He made a video crying. I think he was saying like he became suicidal because everyone hates him. His career is over. There's no recovery from this.
Well, that's the weird thing is like there's so many nutty people that are just so pro-vaccine that, I mean, they went after Eric Clapton for talking about his vaccine injury and calling him a vile anti-vaxxer in the LA Times. I mean, he is vaccinated.
Yeah.
He got vaccinated and he took both doses. He had a bad reaction to the first dose and he had a horrible reaction to the second dose. And just him talking about it made the LA Times write a horrible article about him.
What's up with the media? Like
That's how they make money. They know that people are scared, and especially in LA. There's so many people that are terrified that if you say something that is anti the narrative, when the narrative is vaccines are safe and effective, safe and effective, safe and effective, for the most part, yeah. For the most part.
Yeah.
But a certain percentage of the people that take them get like a serious heart problem. That's a real.
Here's my idea. Here's what I tell people. If you work for a company that mandates the vaccine, get a simple legal letter drafted that says, I, undersigned, assume all liability for this permanent and irreversible medical procedure as a requirement of the job of, employee. See if they'll sign it. Because I assure you, those employers are going to say, I'm not going to sign that.
They're just going to fire you. They'll fire you.
But
then you have to go through court. And right now, I mean, especially if you go to a liberal court, there's so many people that they're so connected to that narrative. The narrative is the vaccines are safe and effective, and if you don't agree with the vaccine, you're an anti-vaxxer. They've even changed the definition of what an anti-vaxxer is to someone who's against mandates.
That's right. And they also, the CDC changed the definition of vaccine too, right?
Yeah.
That means you and I are vaccinated.
Really?
Yep.
When did they change that?
So,
No, they didn't.
the CDC has an article that says a vaccination it used to say something like, it was very specific to the adenovirus vaccines where a small weakened or dead virus is introduced. Now it says it's a chemical that triggers an immune response or something to this effect. Fact check me for sure. But my understanding,
they don't say that we're vaccinated, dude.
Well, I know for sure. I know literally, but the monoclonal antibodies, according to a study, I think the CDC confirmed this, is 8 months of protection at 82% efficacy, and that's actually better than Pfizer and Moderna. So if they effectively do the same thing, because that's how they describe a vaccine, then why can't
they're doing
vaccinated?
that to people, by what you're saying. They're doing that to people who did not test positive for COVID. So imagine you're in a high-risk job, but they can give you the monoclonal antibodies with no COVID in your system at all, and then you have this immense protection.
You are correct. That's right.
Yeah.
So if you had it and then got it, you've got super immunity, I guess.
Right, exactly. That's the idea.
Why can't I say? One of the biggest...
But because it's not a real narrative.
Right.
It's a bullshit narrative. It's not based on objective analysis of the information that's at hand. It's based on you got to take the vaccine because they're influencing politicians. They're influencing all these people. They're influencing the media. When brought to you by Pfizer, the idea that that doesn't have any impact whatsoever in the way they talk about the news is fucking absurd. And that's why they don't care if you have better protection naturally. It's a binary approach. You must take the vaccine.
One of my biggest pet peeves, I guess, is because, we on my show, for instance, we have this argument all the time about efficacy and vaccines and stuff. And I got to a point where I was like, are we going to actually debate the policy, the politics? Because I can tell you this, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a scientist. I can't tell you the nitty-gritty details of enzyme and protease, and these are words I read in an article. But I am, I think fair to say, an expert on being free. I mean that somewhat facetiously, but if we're going to talk about how we handle this, I think it's simple. The government can't mandate medical procedures. Have a nice day. We get into these arguments often, and I think it's good to discuss efficacy. It's good to discuss the vaccine injury and all this stuff, absolutely. But I also think it's important to bring back, hey, how about, I don't care if it's a flu shot, an appendectomy, or a COVID vaccine, the government should not mandate as a requirement for public accommodation you undergo an irreversible medical procedure.
Especially when it's someone like Fauci, who's somehow or another tied into these companies. Like, it's not as simple as this guy has no one influencing him. It's not the case. And, also with Gates, like the fact that Bill Gates is prominently featured in the news talking constantly about vaccines.
You want to flip your shit? In June of 2021, the FDA approved a drug to help treat weaponized smallpox. On November 9th of 2021, Bill Gates warned of smallpox terror attacks. And just the other day, the FBI found vials labeled smallpox at a lab in Philadelphia with another group of vials that said vaccinia. The only smallpox that exists is at the CDC in deep freeze and in Russia. So this triggered a lockdown at the laboratory. No one knows so far.
They don't know what's in the vials yet.
Is it actually smallpox? But why is it
smallpox? Yeah.
So when the FDA approves a drug to treat weaponized smallpox, you have to ask yourself why they fear smallpox if it's been eradicated and only exists in government facilities in the Russia and U.S. And why is Bill Gates warning about smallpox terrorism right then?
Yeah.
It's been only a few days after Bill Gates said this, they find vials labeled smallpox. Look.
Yeah, it's real sketchy.
Could be nothing, but
yeah, it's sketchy. Bill Gates also invested, I believe it was $50 million in look this up. BioNTech, September 2019. So he invested a large sum of money in the company that manufactures these vaccines literally when the pandemic broke out in Wuhan. Like when the first cases were seen in Wuhan, they believe they'd narrowed that down to September of 2019. That is specifically when Bill Gates dumped a bunch of money in there. BioNTech announces new collaborations to develop HIV and tuberculosis programs. So $100 million in total funding. The Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation invests $55 million in infectious disease collaboration that could reach up to $100 million in total funding. And they did that in September, right before the shit hit the fan. Now, does that mean that he had information that there was a breakout? No, but it does. Look, they did discuss this, and Fauci was seen discussing these things. Like I'll send you a video, Jamie, so I don't because I'm talking out of my ass right now. But that they were talking about like trying to find new ways to encourage people to take flu vaccines. They need some sort of a novel approach to do that.
University of Denver has mandated the flu vaccine.
University of Denver has.
Yeah, I believe we had an article published on my site about it. I think that's the obvious next step.
That university's mandated, but I think they're already doing that, aren't they?
No, I just mean that if you can mandate COVID vaccines, you can mandate all of them.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I think that's where the profit lies, right? In mandating vaccines, because if you have 100 million people and you have 100 million doses of vaccine, and you force these people to take that, that's just sheer profit.
It's fucking crazy, man.
It's a lot. It's pretty wild, man. I mean, it really is. It's weird to watch it all happen.
You hear about that the research the NIAID was funding on the beagles?
Yes, I did.
What do you? So actually, self-promotion. We just published an exclusive on Timcast.com. Fauci had been funding. I should say the NIAID has been funding maximum pain research on primates in, I believe it's an island off South Carolina, where they basically induce as much pain as possible to see how these animals react. And we're getting these stories. We published this. You have the beagle story. But there is a very serious question about the limitations of science, like the ethics of it. The thing is, we have greatly benefited from animal experimentation to a horrifying degree, and as what we do to these animals. And a lot of people are happy to just live their lives and not knowing anything about it.
Yeah.
I wonder what impact it will have now that we're discovering, pain research and botfly research on beagles or whatever. Is that going to result in people actually saying, we would rather have less scientific progress on these things if it means we're not torturing animals to this degree?
Well, the thing is, there's not a lot of oversight, so people don't hear about it. That's the problem. Here, I found it. I'm gonna send this to you, Jamie. The problem is, it's like, who's informing people of all these experiments while they're happening? Very few people are actually getting informed of them while it's you find out later. Someone has to be a whistleblower, and then but meanwhile, the studies are ongoing. So it's not like there's clear oversight, and it's not like the public gets to vote on what they think is ethical or what they don't think is ethical. When they think that studies need to be done in order to prevent some sort of an outbreak or save people from something, and then they do these studies, whether it's on primates or beagles or whatever, you really don't hear about it until after it's happened.
Right. Or, to be honest, you never hear about it. You just benefit from the research.
Watch this video, because this is kind of crazy.
Why don't we blow the system up? Obviously, we can't just turn off the spigot on the system we have and then say, hey, everyone in the world should get this new vaccine we haven't given to anyone
This
yet.
is universal
But
flu
there
vaccine they're
must
talking
be
about.
some way that we grow vaccines mostly in eggs, the way we did in 1947.
In order to make the transition from getting out of the tried and true egg growing, which we know gives us results that can be, beneficial. We've done well with that, to something that has to be much better. You have to prove that this works, and then you've got to go through all of the clinical trials, phase 1s, phase 2s, phase 3, and then show that this particular product is going to be good over a period of years. That alone, if it works perfectly, is going to take a decade.
There might be a need or even an urgent call for an entity of excitement out there that's completely disruptive, that's not beholden to bureaucratic strings and processes.
So we really do have a problem of how the world perceives influenza, and it's going to be very difficult to change that unless you do it from within and say, I don't care what your perception is, we're going to address the problem in a disruptive way and in an iterative way, because you do need both.
But it is not too crazy to think that an outbreak of a novel avian virus could occur in China somewhere. We could get the RNA sequence from that, beam it to a number of regional centers, if not local, if not even in your home at some point, and print those vaccines on a patch and self-administer.
You want to hear some shit? The second guy speaking, Rick Bright, he was I think it's a director of BARDA. BARDA is who made the weaponized smallpox drug.
Jesus Christ.
So that's
the way that guy's talking. The way these guys talk about trying to trick people into, or convince people into taking these things, and to be disruptive, and to say, we're going to, it's just the admission that to do it correctly takes 10 years.
Yep.
That's why the emergency use authorization was required to get this vaccine promoted so quickly. In any other circumstance, something that's this controversial, and then also something that has caused this many deaths, would have been pulled off the market. If there's any other pharmaceutical drug that killed, what are What does the VAERS report say currently? Like, what's the number of deaths that are attributed to the vaccine today, currently?
I've heard 17,000, but I don't know if that's true.
Well, let's find out.
Yeah.
What's the number of injured, the number of deaths, the number of people with myocarditis? All that stuff is recorded. Now, it's underreported. What is the number that it's underreported? We don't know. And then there's also, like, people can report things that aren't totally accurate. So we need to find out, like, what's the accuracy of even though it's reported, like, is it true? Like, I don't know.
The one thing to consider is what I call the scaling problem. If we give out 330 million vaccines and 17,000 people die, it sounds like a decently high percentage to be like, holy shit, like maybe we shouldn't do that. But if we give out,
200 million vaccines.
Well,
right.
But less, potentially less.
17,000 people die.
Right. So the way I usually explain it is if you give out 100 smartphones to a bunch of celebrities and 1% fail, one celebrity says my phone broke, nobody bats an eye. You give out 100 million smartphones and 1% fail, the same margin of error, you now have 1 million people online posting how their phones are broken, and people will perceive that as a very serious threat or that the product is not good.
Right. Yeah.
So it's hard when 330 million doses, and now that the boosters, it's going to be 400 million.
Right. And then they also feel like with some people, the boosters will compound the potential negative side effects.
Have you heard? I mean, all these lefties are posting that the booster shot was the worst they've experienced yet.
Yeah, I like how you say lefties because you're a far right guy.
Because I'm far right. Well, I mean, right wingers.
You shouldn't even say that.
Well, but look, like I'll say, the right says this, the left says this, but
what are you? What do you consider yourself?
You want to know my real politics? I want
to know your fake politics.
My fake politics are I'm an astronaut. Like my actual core ideals. When I say real politics, like when it comes to policy, which we don't discuss that often, I'm decently far left. And
that's what's ridiculous about them calling you far right.
But far right and left, like, what do they even mean? I guess
it's just talking points so that people can get people to click on things because it makes you look like an asshole. So if they say far right podcaster Tim Pool is the new poster boy for ivermectin, that's like, oh, what an asshole. Let me click on this guy's shit.
I can actually break down my politics. I believe in the truth. I think the establishment is trash. I think the Republican Party is trash as much as Democrats, but populists got their foot in the door more so than the left populists got in the Democratic Party. But I can give you a really good example of how, like, my sort of like more lefty view of things in terms of economics. Dave Rubin, he had Locals, and they sold to Rumble recently. Did you hear about this?
No.
So Locals was started by Dave Rubin, and I'll probably get some of the details wrong, so but because I'm not trying to get it wrong to disparage Dave or anything, but Patreon bans a bunch of people. And abruptly. And it scares people because Patreon is where podcasters and personalities get subscription revenue to live their lives. So Dave announces he's starting his own version, which will, you'll control your data and you'll control your rules.
Yeah, Bridget Fettisy's on it.
Right. Michael Malice and Tulsi Gabbard. A lot of people sign up for this and use this service same as they would Patreon. Dave Rubin sold the company to Rumble, which is the video platform. I like Rumble. I like Locals. However, that made me angry. And I had we did a segment on this on my show where we discussed the politics of what Dave Rubin did. And
why did it make you angry?
I fully respect enterprise, free market capitalism, and that Dave's perspective was, if people need a service, I will provide it and make myself some money and sell it.
So what's the problem?
I'm a lefty. I believe that the immediate approach should have been, when this problem occurred and people were getting censored, a decentralized technology that is uncensorable that we give to the people for free. I understand it's not easy to make free things, but my immediate reaction was to start a nonprofit, which we have, called the On Foundation, where we have been building out a decentralized open source networking technology. We will give you the program to install on your own server or a hosted server, whatever you want to do. You press enter and boom, you have your own subscription website instantly. We are streamlining it for free because I look at it like, if the powers that be in the elites can control our thoughts and control what we have to say, creating a new Patreon won't solve that problem.
Right, but isn't Rumble committed to free speech? Like, that is like basically the premise of their platform.
And then they sell to whatever company or the leadership changes.
If they do that.
I like Rumble. I use Rumble. But the issue I see here is there is a weakness that can strip away the rights of the people through private centralization of these platforms.
Yeah.
And so my view, as someone who leans more towards decentralized authority, and it's more of a lefty position, is I'm not going to profit off of the fact that people are having their ideas and they're censored.
Is decentralization a lefty opinion? Because it seems like an opinion of people that just don't want to be controlled by any kind of corporations.
Decentralization absolutely exists on the right. If you're like an anarcho-capitalist or libertarian, you believe in free market solutions. So it's not fair to say, universally just like, oh, the left is more for decentralization. But it's more so like I believe all of the people should hold in their hands the keys to the software to never be censored versus a private enterprise can make it and then sell it. So that's more of like, yeah, we had a big conversation. Look, all due respect to locals and to Rumble, because I think it's absolutely phenomenal they exist. The competition is very important. But for me, I'm like, in 10 years and 15 years and 20 years, the same problems will exist. And I'll be completely honest I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but I firmly believe Dave Rubin on locals would absolutely ban. There's probably 100 names I could say off. I'm not going to say. He would ban them in 2 seconds.
Why?
White nationalists. I don't believe Dave Rubin would allow white nationalists to profit off of locals. He would get annihilated in the press, and then he'd have to intervene in some way. Investors, I'm assuming he has investors. I believe he got a big round of funding. You think these investors, wherever they're from, are going to be like, we appreciate that the white nationalists have found a new home base on his platform.
Is that the slippery slope? Because when the ACLU was established, one of the things that they did initially was to defend Nazis and the ability that Nazis have for free speech. And that was a big controversial point because a lot of people were like, why would you ever defend Nazis? And their position is that we are not defending Nazis' position. We are defending their ability to speak, because if you do not defend their ability to have free speech, then it will not be available to everybody else as well. You'll find a way. You can find exceptions and exemptions. You'll find a way to limit free speech across the board. And we're seeing that.
I agree 100%. And that was back when we had the American Civil Liberties Union, which unfortunately today is the Anti-Civil Liberties Union.
They're weird now, right?
Yep.
Like some of the things that they support, like I read about it on Twitter, you're like, what are you saying?
They did just defend James O'Keefe, though. And that is great, and I respect that.
Yeah, the James O'Keefe thing is fascinating, right? So there's a diary apparently that's missing, and it's Joe Biden's daughter's diary. And in that diary, she has some depictions of abuse, and she has some weird thing about her dad, right? And this diary went missing. So they've decided somehow or another that the Project Veritas people own it. They have the possession of it.
I got a dark conspiracy theory on this
But
one.
hold on. They break into James O'Keefe's house early in the morning, and like full on FBI raid, and they go through all of his information and take his phones, and they don't find it. They don't find the diary. But since when has that been something that the FBI does?
James O'Keefe says that he gave the diary to law enforcement, that they couldn't vet it. It was provided to them by someone who claims they had it. They sold it, or they were looking to sell it. James got it, went through it, and said, we're going to give it to the police. The FBI raids the homes of several Veritas journalists, including James O'Keefe himself. And then almost immediately after the raids, the New York Times called the journalists for comment on getting raided, meaning someone who knew the raid happened slipped it to the New York Times.
Yeah.
Then privileged communications between Veritas and their lawyers were somehow leaked to the New York Times. Most people believe, and it is alleged, that the FBI has been leaking legal communications. Like this is beyond serious. To the New York Times, Veritas is in a lawsuit with the New York Times, and they've been winning and doing very well against the New York Times for defamation. Now, all of a sudden, the New York Times has access to Veritas's lawyers' emails between them and their lawyers. How do you handle a lawsuit like that now? I mean, this was
when you say they've been winning, like what? How have they been winning?
It's very difficult to get beyond a motion to dismiss in a defamation case, especially when you're a high-profile public figure. The judge sided with Veritas, and they moved past. They denied a motion to dismiss. So it's actually moving forward, meaning they move to discovery next, where they get to take New York Times journalists, sit them down under oath, and have them answer questions on camera and in front of lawyers. The New York Times filed a stay to temporarily halt that process, and a judge agreed said, okay, we're going to stay the discovery and we're going to postpone this. Then the FBI raids Veritas and gives Veritas's legal communications to the New York Times. So it is alleged. Most people think that's the case, but, for fairness, so it is alleged. This is one of the most terrifying things I've ever heard happen in this country for law enforcement to do, but I think it's worse than this. In October, at the end of October, an FBI whistleblower sent evidence that Merrick Garland and the DOJ were targeting parents concerned about critical race theory using counter-terror tactics. So this is a whistleblower at the FBI. We also know from the leaked communications that James O'Keefe was currently investigating.
You just glossed over that. Go back. Back.
At the end of October, a whistleblower within the FBI leaked communications to Republican members of Congress that Merrick Garland, the AG, the Department of Justice, was using counter-terror tactics to target parents who are concerned about critical race theory.
Why would they do that? What's the motivation behind that?
Well, they say it's because school board members and teachers have been intimidated and threatened because parents don't like the woke, critical race theory stuff in schools. And I think those threats and any threats are bad. Using counter-terror tactics. This is confirmed. And Kevin McCarthy, by the way, not a fan, issued a letter saying, we want Merrick Garland under oath back in front of Congress because he lied. Because he said they weren't using counter-terror tactics on parents.
What are these tactics specifically?
Labeling people under specific terror terms in their databases, to start. There was a letter issued that basically referred, first there was a letter issued that said the parents who are going to these meetings and who are, protesting the stuff are committing low-grade terrorism or something to that effect.
Right, but do we know that if there's some specific allegations or accusations outside of them just going to these board meetings? Is it possible that these parents are threatening these teachers in some sort of a...
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, there have been videos of parents walking up to cars and screaming, you MFer, all that stuff. So, like I said, look, threats are bad. Don't intimidate, don't threaten people. But the use of counter-terror tactics on American citizens is alarming. Now, I'm not trying to hash that whole debate. This is about James O'Keefe.
Yeah.
The New York Times made reference to the fact that James O'Keefe was conducting investigations into the FBI, and the legal communications in question they got access to was James O'Keefe's his team asking the lawyers to what extent are we allowed to secretly record federal law enforcement, and they said, "Woof, dangerous territory." So I'm just speculating, but if you have an FBI whistleblower leaking to the Republicans, is it possible that when James O'Keefe and Veritas said, we want federal law enforcement whistleblowers and are investigating, that the FBI's true reason for raiding Veritas was because they knew a whistleblower was leaking key details that they didn't want the public to have, but they didn't know what Veritas had on them. So they used the Ashley Biden diary as a pretext, because it makes no sense.
Okay.
The fact that the ACLU, these other free press, Trevor Tim of Free Press, that they're going to come out and say, what is the FBI doing to raid a journalist over a journalistic activity? I'm not saying I know for sure. Not a big fan of drawing conclusions,
that
but
does make more sense, right? That would be a way they could find out what they had on them. So a false premise for investigation.
And if it's just speculation, man.
Yeah.
But the timing is rather perfect. I think.
would imagine that O'Keefe thinks in 4D chess. That he's probably prepared for something like this to happen. I can't imagine that they just lay around thinking the FBI is never going to raid them, or that some intelligence agency is never going to raid them. I mean, they're a strange organization, right?
What do you think? What do you think about them?
Well, I mean, they're a strange organization in that so many people hate them, and so many people are willing to throw out the idea of protections against journalists because they say these are not journalists. Glenn Greenwald had a very interesting piece on that recently, where he was talking about how the same arguments that they use with James O'Keefe, regardless of whether or not you like James O'Keefe or appreciate Project Veritas or whatever, the same arguments they were using with Julian Assange, the same arguments they're using with Edward Snowden and with Glenn Greenwald as well, and many other journalists that they decide they don't like their conclusions or they don't like their perspective. And with James O'Keefe is clearly a right-wing guy, and he's coming at this from a right-wing perspective. And I feel like if someone had been doing the same thing from a left-wing perspective and exposing like real problems. Like some of the problems that he's exposed are absolutely real problems, like shadow banning on Twitter, censoring of conservative thought, like all the stuff that they do. The Epstein case. Like, explain what he found out about Epstein.
Veritas published a video of I think her name's Amy Rohrbach of ABC News, caught on a hot camera saying, "We had the Epstein story 3 years ago, and they shut us down. We had witnesses."
Yes. Yeah, and think about all these people that are like the guy from Reuters. No, what's the guy from? Somebody just had to step down. God, I want to say it's like a casino guy or something. There's more than 100 emails, private emails, back and forth.
I don't know.
To Epstein. God damn it.
Mike Cernovich and the Miami Herald did a lot of work exposing and basically kicking off that whole Epstein thing, but Veritas exposing how ABC News, shut down the story.
Barclays, that's right. What is Barclays? What is that?
It's a bank.
Okay.
I'm pretty sure it's a bank.
Why I think it's a casino? Sounds like a casino. So this guy, put it up again, Jamie?
It actually said you could just close that little thing that was blocking it. I think it said continue without...
There it goes. Barclays CEO steps down after Epstein probe. Latest financier to lose job over ties.
Wow.
So this guy, there's private emails that back and forth with him, and they were. But I want you to Google the private emails because some of them were fucking creepy. They had references to Snow White. See, does it say? See if they like talked about some of the details that were in the private emails. Like, what a crazy situation. This is what's really crazy about it. And this goes back to my love of Alex Jones, where people get angry, like, why do you associate with that guy? Alex Jones told me about this over a decade ago. He goes, this is the way they compromise them. They take these guys who are basically nerds, and they bring them to an island. They go, hey, we got all these hot girls, and, they photograph them with them, and they have sex with them, and they find out later they're underage. They have videotape. What happened? Oh, autoplay. And they say that, we have evidence and this and that. And I was like, really? There's a fucking island? Oh my God, it sounds so cliche. It sounds so James Bond. They take them to Fuck Island and they get videotape of them banging girls. But if you think about it, if you're a wealthy guy like Bill Gates, okay, who's now divorced because of all this shit, right? Divorced because of his ties to Epstein, and he's apparently got enough influence that they're kind of letting him slide off of this investigation. You're not hearing a lot of talk about it, but when you're a guy like that and you're married in particular, like how do you, if you're a freak and you want to bang girls, like how do you do it? You can't. You literally can't. So if you're a guy also that is a really wealthy guy and you enjoy all this power and you enjoy all this influence and you're so much different than regular people, you're on yachts and you're hanging around with the global elite, and they just have girls come up to you and start talking to you, you're probably like, well, this is like part of the privilege of my job. Yeah. Part of the privilege of who I am as this guy worth $100 billion. That, people will come up to me and we're all drinking champagne together, and this guy Epstein assures me everything's fine, we've got this all worked out, and he's not a paranoid guy. He probably has a couple of cocktails in him, and the next thing you know, they got a videotape on him. Yeah. And that's what they did. They did it to Clinton. They did it to everybody. He flew 26 fucking times with Bill Clinton. 26 fucking times.
I had a tweet.
Imagine.
I had a tweet when Epstein stuff was coming out with the documents out of the Miami Herald and Mike Cernovich's case, and I said, Bill Clinton flew on this plane. Someone screenshot it, put it on Facebook, and one of these fact checkers claimed it was fake news. So it deranks, you can't see it.
Yep.
And the funny thing is, there's a link when they do these Facebook fact checks. When you click it, basically the fact check confirmed everything I said about Bill Clinton on the plane was true. They just added at the end, but we think they're like, but we think his framing is not contextually, correct, so we're going to call it false.
How is the framing not contextually correct? Either you get on the fucking plane or you don't. Did you get on the plane with the pedophile? You did? Was it the pedophile's plane? It was? Did you know he was a convicted pedophile? You did. Interesting. And Mr. Gates, Would you like to explain? Like, imagine.
But we see this with the fact checkers on Facebook. They're basically the censors, not the fact checkers.
Right. Well, it's also like who's doing it. You know, we were talking about this yesterday, I believe, that guys from gun manufacturers were talking to me about how during the election, people started going through their pages and pulling things from 8-9 years ago and banning them, just banning them, because they were worried that a lot of these whether it's gun manufacturers or very influential right-wing groups, could have an effect on voting. So even if they have an effect, like say if there's a gun manufacturer or some sort of a big right-wing site that has 1 million followers or 500,000 followers, and then they put out something that impacts someone who's on the fence. Like maybe there's a guy who's kind of centrist, but he believes in some right-wing thing, so he follows a few right-wing people. Maybe he's right-curious, right? And so then you find out something about the Hillary Clinton death count or something like that. He's like, that's it. I'm fucking about. So if you can just cut those people out of the mix, you've got a few thousand votes here, a few thousand votes there, and overall it stacks up. Right. It stacks up, and it means something. This is what they did.
They needed to ban Alex Jones. He was way too influential.
Yeah.
Trump was not an establishment player for all the good and bad, and Alex was massively supporting the guy. They didn't care about...
Trump was certainly an establishment player. I mean, he was an establishment player in terms of like the left and the right dynamic that we're accustomed to, but in terms of like being a big name that the public was aware of.
No, yeah. You're right. I just mean the establishment political structure.
Yeah.
He was a billionaire. He was a TV mogul. He was a celebrity. He is still one of the massive, powerful elites, but he came from outside the political infrastructure where they kind of control things, where you play ball, where they have the super PACs, and he steamrolls through it.
Yeah, and he might do it again.
I hope he doesn't.
Well, it's either him or it's going to be someone who is a more moderate Republican like Ron DeSantis. I think the DeSantis... Like when you look at what happened in Virginia, how they won Virginia with a Republican that's like a reasonable person, and then that woman, the crazy thing was like calling that woman who's the lieutenant governor, the black woman, calling her they were saying that when white supremacy voices come out of black mouths, I was like, what the fuck?
Remember Larry Elder?
Oh my God,
the black face of white supremacy. It's Clayton Bigsby come to life.
They keep saying this. It is such a crazy thing to say. And what they're doing inadvertently is they're diminishing the distinction of someone being a white supremacist. By saying that, like there's real white supremacists out there. There's real racist people that think we should have an all-white country. They're out of their fucking mind, and they're real. Those are real people. That's a real white supremacist. There's real people that think that someone is better or worse based on the amount of melanin in their skin and based on the geography where their ancestors came from. It's fucking crazy. But it's not that lady that's the lieutenant governor. It's not her.
Who's
Are you
black?
out of your fucking mind? She's black, and but because she's sponsored by the NRA and because she's a pro-Second Amendment woman, I mean, I don't know what other reasons they have to say that this lady supports white supremacist ideas, but it's so crazy.
It's very clear that what the official narrative on white supremacy is, the phrase is they're trying to interchange liberty or classical liberalism with white supremacy.
Right.
So keeping and bearing arms.
Right.
You know that our gun rights have expanded dramatically over the past several decades. If you look at a map from 1986, almost no states issued concealed carry. Like a good portion of the states were like, maybe we will. A lot of them said, no, we won't. Today, a good majority of the states are constitutional carry. This is an issue of freedom.
A good majority.
Yeah.
What percentage of those states are constitutional carry? Constitutional carry means that you could have a concealed carry weapon and you don't have to go through courses. You don't have to do anything. I know Texas has that now.
I will clarify. Maybe a good majority was a bit hyperbolic, but if you can pull up
it's only 13, buddy.
Okay, so I'm definitely wrong about a good majority. But I guess it's because when you look at the map, it's the big empty states that take up a lot of space that are constitutional carry. But It's growing. It's getting more and more. It's getting larger. But I'll correct this too.
They're actually giving out concealed carry permits in Los Angeles now.
Whoa!
Which they never were doing before. And the sheriff has said very specifically that the reason why they're doing it is a large uptick in crime and the defunding of the police department. And the fact that it's not just the defunding of it, but they've declawed the police department. They've taken away their ability to enforce these laws and regulations.
Well, I'll tone down what I said and correct. I think we're looking at shall issue states. So you have, I think the majority of states, and again, maybe wrong, but are shall issue or constitutional carry. Shall issue states mean if you apply, they have to give it to you. You look at a place like Hawaii, New Jersey, and parts of New York, and they claim they're may issue, where they'll decide, but they're actually called, in practice, no issue.
Well, I know people who've gotten concealed carry permits in New York City.
Yeah.
So it's not no issue.
No, not New York. Parts of New York. I think like Long Island and parts of New York.
But I think New York City is the hardest place to get it.
I think New Jersey is.
Harder than New York?
Yes.
Really?
Yeah. And it's because New York as a state actually has a lot of open rural space.
Mm-hmm.
And New York City is very, very, very difficult. That's where the Supreme Court lawsuit is coming into play now because the lawsuit is, I have a right to bear arms, you can't deny me. New Jersey as a whole.
Well, hold on. I think the Supreme Court case has to do with people from New York State who have a concealed carry permit and the fact that it's denied in New York City. And that it's instead of a state issue, it's a yes. Let's find out if that's the case. I'm pretty sure that what's going on in New York State is there's some sort of a lawsuit about people that have a concealed carry permit in the state. So people from like say Rochester or maybe even more rural area that they can't carry in the city.
I know there was a lawsuit where they basically said the idea of may issue is where you apply and they say, give me a good reason why you need a gun. And if you don't have a good reason as we decide, we will not give it to you. I know there was a lawsuit about that saying, I have a right to keep and bear arms. So if I apply, you have to give it to me. Maybe we're talking about two different cases.
I think we are.
Yeah.
I think we're talking about what I had heard was that there was a case from upstate New York where people were trying to figure out why their concealed carry in upstate New York does not work in the city.
That's actually a really good point.
Yeah, because it's a state issue.
Yeah.
Like, how can it be a city issue?
But I don't. How will that impact the rest of the country in the Supreme Court?
The fucking city of New York is gone. I mean, it's gone until this gentleman who won the mayor, Eric Abrams, right?
Adams, right?
Adams, excuse me. Adams, who is a Democrat, but yet very pro-police and very tough on crime, which is what that city needs. Because that city is probably things would have to go really sideways before they elected a Republican.
Quickly digging through this. This is for the state, and then when I look at Sullivan's Law, it doesn't say that it applies to the city. The city.
Go back to that, please.
Okay.
So it says U.S. Supreme Court mulls overturning New York's concealed carry gun law. Yeah, this is it.
Can you scroll down a little bit and see? This one might be
again.
Yeah. This is the May issue case. You need proper cause to get a permit, which means they can just tell you no, you can't bear arms.
But this is just for the state.
Right.
So according to what Sullivan's Law is, it says in the city, that's the licensing authority is the police department, not.
Which rarely issues concealed carry licenses to anyone except retired police officers or those who can describe by the nature of their employment, for example, a diamond merchant who regularly carries gemstones or a district attorney who regularly prosecutes dangerous criminals requires carry of a concealed handgun. My friend who got a concealed carry in New York is a celebrity.
That makes sense.
And he got one.
But
it was not easy. It took years for him to get it.
When I was in New Jersey, I went to the police station. Like we had a guy, a pedophile, try to break into the house, and in the middle of the night, I wake up, I hear rustling, and I got no guns. And the police come, cop tells me if it were me, I'd answer the door with a shotgun, and I'm like, well, I don't got one. Go to the police department. They gave me bullshit information on how to get a gun. So a few months go by of me confused, like what the fuck is going on, until finally I figured it out. And it was not easy to get my firearm license, which allows you to only get certain weapons that you keep in your home and never leave, you never take out. I was even told that you got to be careful driving from the gun store after you buy it because they can arrest you, and they probably will. That's how bad it is in Jersey. And you have a duty to retreat from your own home in New Jersey, technically. They say it's a partial castle doctrine state. But when I talked to a lawyer about it...
But hold on. You're glossing over that.
Right,
you have a duty to retreat, meaning if someone breaks in your house, it's your job to leave your house.
Yes.
Right, okay.
But to be specific, what I was told by the lawyer, because I said, look, if this guy tries to break in again, and I pull out my shotgun and I, like Dave Chappelle said, birdshot, buckshot, what's my liability? And I was told, you have to exhaust all means to avoid that lethal conflict. If you cannot, because it's partial castle doctrine, escape your home to a safe place, you're allowed to use whatever means to prevent great bodily harm or death to yourself. However, you will be arrested, you will be charged with murder, and then you can apply that affirmative defense after you've paid for your lawyers and gone to court and made your arguments. Maybe the jury will agree with you. Fuck that.
Yeah, see, that's why people move.
That's why I moved.
When people get their homes broken into in a state like that or city like that, that like clearly is not protecting people's ability to defend themselves, which is crazy. If someone's breaking into your home and threatening to cause bodily injury to you, it should be really clear. Like, you should be able to defend yourself, especially if you have a family.
It's tough because, so I'm in West Virginia now. West Virginia is known for being like, if you step on someone's property, they can perceive it as a threat. But it's not like you just kill anybody. But, you still might get arrested, even in West Virginia or Texas or Florida, because, there could be political pressure or there could be an argument that we don't actually believe it was self-defense. And that's why I think castle doctrine, hard castle doctrine and stand your ground is so important. Don't come into my home. Yeah.
Do you know the story about the guy who shot the rioter in Austin?
No.
Well, he wasn't technically a rioter. He was a protester, but he was walking around with, I believe he had an AK-47, open carrying an
yes,
AK-47.
of course.
So this guy who was a veteran, who was an Uber driver or Lyft driver or what have you, and he's driving, going by the directions, and he goes into where these people are protesting. And he's being forced to turn around, right? So as he drives towards it, not knowing that they've got the streets blocked off so that they can protest, this guy points a gun in his face. And, he's LARPing, essentially. He's playing like he's a badass. And the guy who was in the Uber was apparently a veteran and pulled a gun out immediately and shot the guy because the guy's pointing a gun at him. They acquitted him. They let him out. They did no charges. And then I believe it was like 10 months later, the district attorney decided to charge him with murder.
I'm pretty sure that after he shot and killed that guy, they shot at his car. So the guy approaches with the AK, the driver shoots him, and then they fired back at his vehicle.
Perhaps. Yeah. I'm not sure. But the guy pointed a gun at him, and then he shot him.
An AK.
Yeah, which is, and also, it's like, we could remember, and we were talking about this last night with Blair, there was so much fucking chaos in the air back then. If you go back to those riots, if you go back to the George Floyd protests and the riots, there was so much chaos in the air. There was cars being lit on fire, houses being broken into. I'll never forget there was this video of these people walking down the street protesting, and they just threw a rock at the window of this house where people were looking out. They were just looking out at them. And the guy was like, hey, man, we're with you. And they fucking threw rocks at their windshield, or their windows, rather, for no reason. It was that kind of chaos.
There's a video of some college kids in a dorm, I think it was, and they're like on a second floor.
Yeah.
And is that what you're talking about?
That's exactly what I'm talking about.
Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I got the context wrong.
These
But then
guys
the
were
rock just
walking
shatters the window.
Yeah, and they go, what the fuck? We're with you. We're giving you thumbs up. They were giving them thumbs up. See, it was anarchy and chaos. And when that kind of shit happens, people get terrified. And they don't know if they're going to get shot. They don't know what the fuck is going to happen because all rules are out the window. You're in a period of lawlessness.
And you put people in a constant state of stress and anxiety over their safety, and that foments like revolution and unrest.
And then they make poor choices, whether they shoot at people or, they get shot. Buildings get lit on fire. I mean, that's what happens during these wild, chaotic moments of rioting.
One thing that's really common among these left-wing activist groups, something that I covered when I was down on the ground at Occupy and all these other events, is there's a thing called the diversity of tactics. And the activists organizers often say, respect the diversity of tactics. What that really means is don't stop the violence. So nobody's going to care if a bunch of, bleeding heart hippies are waving signs and marching through the street. For the most part, people might honk at them. The reason why they have to issue the warning telling people to respect the diversity of tactics is that when black bloc, Antifa-type individuals or rioters burn and smash things, they immediately turn to the peaceful people and say, you have to respect their diversity of tactics, basically allow them to do this.
Right.
That's what we end up seeing in a lot of places, but when you look at Rittenhouse, I think it's a case, it's a really good example. What that really means is the criminal elements who are here for no other reason than to destroy because they're upset, they're unwell, or violent are going to be allowed to do so. So there's two important things, notably in Ferguson, when I was on the ground covering those riots. It was local young black Ferguson residents linking arms to guard the liquor store where Michael Brown had stolen the cigarillos. It was out-of-towners who were ransacking and looting everything. Al Jazeera was there. I'm standing right next to this reporter, Sebastian. I think Walker is his name. He was with Vice for a while. Asking these young black men, why are you linking arms to guard this? And this kid said, he was not a kid, he was a guy. He was like, young man, this is our neighborhood. These people don't live here. They're destroying our home. They're burning down our stores. We don't want this.
Right, and this is points back to the Rittenhouse case too, right? Because these three guys that he winds up shooting, these three guys that do have criminal records, they were there to take part in the chaos. Pretty clear.
It's possible that Gage Grosskreutz was a revolutionary. I mean, he raised his fist and said, long live the revolution at a rally after the fact. But look,
what the fuck does that mean, though?
No, it means he believes in the cause.
But he also has a criminal record, right?
I think a large portion of his criminal record was expunged or something, but he
that was
beat
like
his grandmother
6 days before the trial.
But here's what I...
But hold on, isn't that like really controversial? The fact that his record was expunged 6 days before the trial?
Yes.
I mean, that's kind of fucking crazy when you've got a guy who is a witness for the prosecution. And it turns out he was one of the star people and the only guy that survived that this kid shot, and he's a piece of shit.
And the prosecutor instructed the detectives not to execute a signed search warrant against his phone. That's right. And that was very, very confusing and controversial. Wait. When do the police not get a signed search warrant and then the prosecutor says don't execute it, so they say, okay.
Yeah.
But here's what I mean. Gage Grosskreutz is a true believer. He showed up to that protest as a revolutionary who believes in whatever he believes, and he was there with the medical kit. He may have bad ideology. He may be a misguided person. Some people say similar things to Kyle Rittenhouse. But Rosenbaum was a child rapist. I don't believe, based on the evidence, that he actually cared about Black Lives Matter. He was, I think, they say he had just gotten out of a mental hospital. Some say over a suicide attempt. I don't know. But the dude was yelling, shoot me, N-word, at a kid with a gun. I think it's possible that this dude...
Suicide by cop almost, or suicide by,
Exactly.
Forcing people.
This guy, I don't believe, actually cared about any causes. So when you have the facilitators, the organizers say respect the diversity of tactics, they're making space for criminal elements who just want destruction, damage, or to profit.
Well, that's the armed wing of the far left party. Like, that's what Antifa is. They're like the thugs that enforce the ideas. That's why I wanted to ask you about this. When Chris Cuomo was on CNN and he said, who said that all protests have to be peaceful?
That's great.
But here's the question. Does he get fed that? Is he allowed to say whatever he thinks? Or do they have a script for him? Because CNN's not live, right? They're recording these segments.
A lot of it's live.
Come on.
A lot of it is live, but
really?
Oh yeah.
With those guys talking, they allow those guys to talk live.
It's a mix though.
Right.
It is. You'll get some, like when they do interviews with people, it's sometimes it's live, sometimes it's not. So I've been on MSNBC before, and it was a pre-record.
But why would they make it live? It doesn't seem like, especially because what CNN has really become is more editorial and opinion pieces than anything.
Right.
It's people expanding on a narrative. That's basically what they are.
The opinion stuff is probably pre-recorded.
Right. So you get a guy like Chris Cuomo saying something like that. Is he reading a teleprompter?
I don't know, but I do know, and this is it's I've been saying the word evil a lot. It's harsh, but I think it's true when you refer to Chris Cuomo. He's an evil person.
Why say that?
He faked having COVID, he faked being in COVID quarantine, and everybody knows he did.
Well, here's what he did. He came out of the basement and he said, "This is my first time coming out of the basement. I'm finally released from COVID quarantine." But I attribute that to producers because I worked on television shows and I know what the fuck they want to do. They always want a moment, like a big thing.
However, he had been seen and got into a fight with a guy 30 minutes away from his home.
Right.
Look, if you
outside where he was looking at property that he was building something on,
That's right.
someone yelled at him.
And then he went on his own radio show, I believe it was on Sirius, and said, this
talked about
guy
the
comes
guy.
up to me and he's going to have how you have words with me.
He has a serious show too?
I think it was on Sirius.
Yeah, he called him like a fat, tired douchebag or something like
Right.
that.
Look,
yeah, because the guy was riding a mountain bike.
It's the banality of evil, I guess.
I don't think that's evil. I think it's deceptive, but I think it's theatrically deceptive. It's like, here's Chris Cuomo's big moment coming out. We got to catch the moment, Chris. Well, I've already been out. Well, don't matter. No one knows. We're going to catch the moment. I don't find that to be evil.
Well,
it's deceptive, but it's standard operational procedure for anyone that produces a television show, particularly reality shows.
That's why I say it's more akin to the banality of evil.
I don't think it's evil at all. I just think it's corny. You know, him coming out of the fucking basement,
Just
pretending.
to correct this real quick, apparently his full record wasn't expunged. 6 days before, he had a case for drunk driving that was dismissed on a technicality.
Expunged felony conviction.
Yeah, but he still
means
had
it can no longer be counted against him. So he still had a record.
He testified to that apparently.
Interesting.
Okay, so his arrest and case history from the State Department of Justice is much larger than you would currently find through the online court records. It shows a string of dismissed cases and an expunged felony conviction. About what, though?
Look at that next sentence. Read that.
Okay. This means that it can no longer be counted against him.
Sorry, the next one under
January 2021, he was accused of second offense drunk driving, but the case was dismissed on a prosecutor's motion. So they did that specifically because they wanted to make sure that he wasn't, that they didn't bring that up during the case.
Or maybe they said to him, look, you testify for us, you say what you saw, and maybe this drunk driving charge goes away.
He does, however, have a prior misdemeanor conviction for intoxicated use of a firearm in Wisconsin. But that could be, he had a couple of beers and went deer hunting.
His concealed carry license had expired, and he was seen on video with that.
So he had illegally
So-
possessing a gun,
correct.
which I think is a felony. I think, it depends on where you're at, but that's actually not true because I think in California, carrying a gun concealed is actually a misdemeanor. I think Ethan Suplee was telling us about that.
You know what's interesting about Gage Grosskreutz? He was from far away. He traveled, 40 plus minutes or whatever. But let's say Gage Grosskreutz was not from Kenosha.
Right.
He traveled very far to go to a riot where he knew there was violence.
Because Kyle Rittenhouse traveled 30 minutes, right?
Well, so this is what's interesting. Gage Grosskreutz travels from far away to where he knows there's violence. He brings an illegal gun, and he says it's because he was an EMT who wants to help people. Kyle Rittenhouse travels across state lines from far away to where he's been accused of bringing an illegal gun where he knew there was violence because he wanted to be an EMT. They're not the same stories, but it's remarkable to me that the narrative on Rittenhouse was always like he's evil, he's a bad guy, when Gage Grosskreitz's story was actually the right narrative. He's a guy who's not from Kenosha who brought a gun illegally into a riot and then pointed it at someone and he got shot. Whereas Kyle Rittenhouse, his dad lives there, his grandma lives there, his cousins live there, he works there, his best friend lives there. He lives just on the other side of the border in what is effectively a suburb of Kenosha. He went there, not with a gun, but was given one by Dominic Black, which he was legally allowed to possess.
So someone gave him a gun once he got there?
That's right.
What happened?
Dominic Black.
So is that confirmed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Dominic Black has been criminally charged for providing the weapon, which will be interesting. I believe it's a straw purchase charge, which means Kyle Rittenhouse testified that he gave the money to Dominic Black to buy the rifle so that once Kyle turned 18, he could possess it because he can't buy a gun under 18, but he can possess a rifle specifically. He said he testified the reason he didn't get a handgun is because he knows under 18 you can't have one, but you can have a standard rifle.
So all this talk about, so you could break it down here, all this talk about him traveling across state lines with a firearm, that's not true. All this talk about him being in illegal possession of that gun, that's not true.
Right. He lives in Antioch, Illinois, and I believe the reason was he's originally from Kenosha, but his mom and his dad split, and so he stays with his mom about 20 miles away from Kenosha.
It's 21 miles from the scene. Yeah, which is pretty close.
He wasn't an EMT, but neither was Gage Grosskreutz. My understanding, and I could be wrong, Grosskreutz's EMT certificate or whatever expired in 2017, and he did not re-up. They both wanted to go there claiming to provide medical attention. They both had weapons. But Grosskreutz was the guy who was carrying illegally.
Rittenhouse was going there saying he was providing medical attention?
And he did. He provided medical attention to the rioters themselves, I believe on more than one occasion. Not only that, but testimony from Drew Hernandez was that when there was a conflict arising from the militia guys on the roof and the rioters, Rittenhouse actually came down and walked up to them with his hands fanning down, trying to de-escalate the tensions, and then the rioters de-escalated and left, which shows, this is on video, my understanding is provided to the state. The Kyle Rittenhouse, not only did he have no intention to hurt anybody, he was actively trying to stop violence. It's crazy, right?
The whole thing is crazy because they did chase him down, and that's when he shot them. And most people didn't even know that. And then there was some talk today about video evidence that had been withheld.
Oh, shit, dude. This is dark stuff.
Yeah.
So this was actually included in the motion by the defense that was put out on given to the judge on the 15th. We are fucked on this story. Check this out. The state had what they call unicorn evidence. It emerged, 2 weeks ago, like in the middle of trial. They get this drone footage. It's high definition, but it's so far away from where Kyle is, you can't actually see anything. The defense makes the argument that the video shows Kyle Rittenhouse pointed his gun at the Zeminskis. This is the guy who had the gun and fired in the air. And then Rosenbaum chased Rittenhouse in defense of others, such that Rittenhouse provoked him to attack him, and then Rittenhouse led him to the parking lot where he could shoot and kill him. Because of this footage, the prosecution was able to get a jury instruction on provocation, which means the judge said to the jury, if you believe that Rittenhouse provoked him, he cannot be found to have been acting in self-defense. The prosecution didn't withhold evidence. This is what the big story was. Prosecution withholds evidence. No. They manipulated the evidence, and it's darker than that. The video received by the defense was a low-resolution video. It would play on a screen like normal, but it was fuzzier. The defense did not know they were not given the true and correct video, which means if the state withheld the evidence and then played it in court, this is our key evidence proving Rittenhouse committed a crime. The defense would say, Your Honor, we were never provided this evidence. And the judge would say, stop, give them the evidence, come back, give them a chance to form a rebuttal. Because the defense thought they did receive the evidence, they weren't able to actively scrutinize it because it was low resolution. When the video was played in court by the defense, the prosecution goes, our version is much clearer. That's when the defense said, what the fuck? You provided us evidence that we could not discern, then told, then what the prosecution did was they got an expert to use algorithmic software to enhance it, basically, which generates false images. It's not real images, and I can break that down. Present that to the judge, and the defense did not know that they were using different evidence to try and get this introduced.
So is that video available, the enhanced video?
They were given it on the 13th after evidence had closed and the trial concluded.
To us.
Oh, yeah. My understanding is that I don't know how, but Rekieta Law, they've been doing this big live stream, played both videos, and you can see it. Now, when I first heard this, I said, how would you not realize that the video they're playing in court was a higher resolution than what you had? So I actually, on my TV, played comparable resolutions, and when you're looking for it, you can see it, but when you don't realize it, you don't realize it. The TV screens are big, they're already kind of blurry, and so what happens is this disadvantaged the defense in their ability to watch the video and actually say, look here, Kyle Rittenhouse's arm is pointed in this direction. By getting the low-res video, I don't know what I see. The prosecution's going to argue something, and we can't form So what they did was the defense argued you can't use CGI imagery in a court case, but they were unable to accurately explain to the judge why it was CGI. So the judge said, I don't know what you're talking about. We'll allow it. I'll tell you this. The image introduced by the prosecution is obviously not a picture of anything. There's a big white.
What are you talking about?
There's a big white sign.
Can we see it?
Yeah, you can pull it up. If you go to legal insurrection, and then it's an old. You look for the articles written by Andrew Branca. He shows a side by side. Andrew Branca is a foremost expert on self-defense law. He's brilliant. He shows a side-by-side from evidence of the enhanced version and the regular version, and you can clearly see it looks like one of those Google deep fakes of weird nothing. There's a white sign. When you look at the real image, it's low resolution and blurry. When you look at the prosecution's evidence, there's two signs, a faded large and small sign over each other, because the computer program can't actually enlarge or enhance. It just adds more pixels. So what did it do? Like Google deepfake AI technology or whatever, it just duplicated the signs over each other, and people have referred to it as the signs being ruptured because its ghost is being pulled from its body. They used that to argue, and get this, they argued. Kyle Rittenhouse puts down a fire extinguisher, within a split second, takes his gun off, flips the strap, points with his left hand at the Zeminskis, then runs, and while running, takes the strap off, flips it back to his right hand, turns and shoots Rosenbaum. When the defense objected, saying he's facing the wrong direction, the prosecutor immediately goes, "That's an argument," and the judge says, "That's an argument," meaning in closing, it was a closing argument, so you can just rebut that if you want when it comes up. It's remarkable that the state was allowed to introduce this, and it's unfortunate because the defense, look, they're boomers. They didn't understand the technology. Richards in the defense said they use a 3D AI logarithm to predict imagery, and the judge goes, "What?" I would have said it very simply. Your Honor, the image they're presenting is not from August 25th, 2020. End of story. When's the image from? It's from 2 weeks ago at a crime lab in Kenosha, from the police crime lab, not from the night in question. If that still got to the point where they brought in the expert, and they did, this guy James Armstrong, I would have asked the expert, this image you're presenting to the jury, when was that image created? And he would say, October 30th, 2021.
Well, if he said it that way, he probably wouldn't say it that way.
This is not a very good way to look at it, but this is what is on that website.
So
'Cause it's already blurry.
It's already
look like
blurry.
shit.
But take a look at the sign. You can see that
The
it's
left side, that the sign is like two signs. Yeah.
it's not a real
But
image.
It's crazy is it's still super blurry.
Exactly. We made a joke. We called it the Rorschach test. That, if you want to figure out someone's politics, show them an ink blotch, and then this image. And if they say it shows Kyle Rittenhouse pointing a gun at someone, then you know their politics.
I'm exhausted about this subject. I think we've covered it enough.
Oh, for sure.
But there's no. I thought the verdict would have already
No, they're
been
still
out.
They're actually. I was looking this up right now. They're talking about it in court. I think they're actually watching the video in HD. They were going back and forth about was there a compression error with the email being sent? Did it change the file name? And they're trying to prove that this can or can't. I'm just trying to figure it out. But no verdict yet.
But it's just weird that it's become a race issue.
For sure, man.
A white guy shooting white guys, and then there's so many Black Lives Matter people that have a vested interest in this guy being found guilty.
You know what's fascinating is right now I like using civics for polling because they have a long track where they show you real-time polling throughout every time they implement the poll over years. Black Lives Matter today is tied 44% opposition, 44% support. What's interesting here is that when the George Floyd incident happened, support for Black Lives Matter skyrocketed. Then the riots happened and it plummeted. And now opposition is rivaling. So I tell people, man, the violence really makes you lose politically.
Yeah.
And if they kept it peaceful, they would own politics right now in this country.
I know, but that's what the crazy narrative is, that the peacefulness doesn't work, and that you have to crack some eggs to make an omelet.
It's just not true.
The thing is, it doesn't work when it comes to polling, but it does work in terms of people placating, people giving into it, people that are scared, especially liberals. Liberals in the sense of, or in the face of that kind of violence, immediately show that they're in support of those people. So they'll show they're in support of the violence.
Right.
They'll show they're in support of Black Lives Matter, and they'll do it because they're cowards. And they'll put it on their Instagram, and they'll put it on their Twitter, and they'll do it publicly to virtue signal and let everybody know that they're on the right side. And a lot of it is because of fear.
Virtue signaling. But you take a look at what happened in New Jersey with that Republican state senator. You saw that story, right? Edward Durr, I think his name is. Spent $153 to run as a Republican.
Yes.
He's a trucker, and he did not campaign beyond that, and he beat the incumbent Democrat.
Yeah.
I think we're at a point where when you get Democrats placating, defending, or supporting the violence, regular people would vote for a ham sandwich over the establishment.
Well, then there was also the weirdness of that election. The governor's election, the election for governor
in Jersey
is fucking It's all these mail-in ballots. Like, that's just the easiest way to rig an election. Like, they've shown, like, when you talk to experts in election results and the ability to manipulate, they say that the most vulnerable aspect is mail-in ballots.
I'll say this first. I do not believe there was sufficient voter fraud to give Donald Trump to have stolen the election from Trump. I believe Biden won because rules were changed because of universal mail-in voting, advantage to Democrats. However, in North Jersey, there was a huge story where the courts basically ended an election after the fact, nullified it, and ordered a re-election because they discovered bundles of mail-in votes from different areas, like in one mailbox. And then they found I have to pull up the story, but there was like 30% of the ballots were like signatures didn't match and stuff like that. Now, in the governor race in New Jersey, and I'm not saying that, what's his name, Citarelli, that he lost because of voter fraud, but there was a report from northern Jersey, 100% reporting Republican victory, and then overnight, 100% reporting Democrat victory. So a lot of people saw that and said, how did they report 100%?
Right.
And then the votes changed.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
But I know that North Jersey's got some problems.
North Jersey's corrupt. It's always been corrupt. And there's room for fuckery. There's a lot of room for fuckery when it comes to mail-in ballots. There just is. And that's one of the reasons why people are so skeptical of people that are enforcing the idea of using mail-in ballots. Like the mail-in ballot concept came up during this election because of the pandemic. People are like, it's the only way to be safe. Mail-in ballots are safer. You don't want people to go to a official polling place and run the risk of catching COVID.
That's true, but before, it was in October of 2020, Pennsylvania Republicans passed universal mail-in voting unconstitutionally before there was an outbreak of anything. And this is an interesting story. They initially tried to create universal absentee, but found the Constitution of Pennsylvania bars universal mail-in voting.
Well, see, the thing about mail-in voting, like, I don't think it's specific to one party or the other. Like, if they want fuckery, if the right wants fuckery or the left wants fuckery, it seems to be the best path.
Within reason, but the Democrats are heavily advantaged by mail-in voting. So you're in New York City. You've got a building complex with 100 apartments or 100 condos. You get 2 Democrat activists to walk in the building and knock on the door. Family answers. You say, I see you got a mail-in ballot right there on your table. Did you fill it out yet? And he goes, no, I didn't. Why don't you fill it out? Put it in the mailbox. The mailman will get it for you. That's not illegal. They can cover all 100 of those families in one day. Now you do Republicans who tend to live in rural and suburban areas. What are you going to do? Going to drive 100 miles in one day to get the same amount of families?
Is that effective, that door-to-door shit?
Absolutely.
Is it?
Especially, so I used to do a lot of fundraising, vote registration, activism stuff. And funny enough, it was for like Democratic causes and registering to vote Democrats and things like that. We would do postcarding. I did nonprofit fundraising on the streets. We'd get people to fill out cards. It works. I mean, when you get 10,000 postcards dumped on a congressperson's desk, it plays a role. So when we would do fundraising, the crazy thing was I would get people to give over their credit card information, sign up on the street for Greenpeace, for all the. I could convince. For the short stint I was there, I was one of the top in the nation, walking up to a stranger and within a minute getting their credit card and writing it all down and walking away. When you knock on a door, and someone says, hey, what's going on? You say, we want to make sure everybody's voting. It's so important, and we know you got your mail-in vote. Why don't you fill it out right here while we wait? Put it in your mailbox, and the mailman will take it for you. Maybe it's 1 in 10 say yes, but if it's 1 in 10, it's 1 in 10 for Republican, Libertarian, Democrat, whatever. If the Democrats have the ability to use population density in that regard to their advantage, universal mail-in voting as a function is just advantaging Democrats over Republicans.
I'm so burnt out. I really am. I'm burnt out on all this shit.
Bro, and I'm doing a show tonight. I just talk too much.
I just find it's exhausting. It's exhausting, and it's just, if the thing about even the concept of voter fraud, it just removes so much enthusiasm people have for the process if they really think that there's fuckery going on. It makes some people angry, but for a lot of people, it almost makes them apathetic because it makes them just feel like there's no hope.
Well, that's why my personal belief is that the Trump narrative around fraud, about how he really won, is actually meant to just destabilize the populist movement.
I don't know about that. He thought that he won. He wanted people. He thought there was going to be some chance that someone was going to change the vote.
He fell for it.
Yeah. Well, whether he fell for it or not, whether he really believed that he had the kind of influence. I mean, when you're the president of the United States and for 4 years and you're actually getting a lot of good things done, right? He's getting a lot of good things done in regards to trade, in regards to, you know, some of the impacts it's having on businesses. And then the COVID hits, the shit hits the fan, everything's falling apart. And then he loses the election. And he's still of the mind that he has all this influence. And he probably thought he could get people to overturn the election or change the election.
I think Trump really believes it. I think he genuinely believes it. You look at this, there was a lot of questionable shit.
Well, the thing is, it's not 0% voter fraud.
Right.
Like, what's the percent?
Well,
like in every vote, by the way, every vote, there's some percentage of voter fraud. This is what's weird about this introduction of illegal aliens into this country. At the same time, they're promoting this idea that you shouldn't have to have an ID to vote. Like, both those things are so crazy while it's happening, because at the same time, you have to have a proof of vaccination in order to do a lot of things. So you have to have ID. So ID is racist if you want people to use ID to vote. But ID is mandatory if you want to go to restaurants, if you go to all these other places, because you have to be vaccinated. Because it's so inconsistent.
What if I told you that illegal immigrants in this country, each and every one, does vote in the presidential election?
What? Each and every one.
Each and every one.
Every
now,
illegal alien
every
does
single
not
one.
vote.
Stop. Well, hold on. I'm obviously playing. I'm obviously making a bit, right?
I didn't know you're making a bit.
Right. Well,
sounds like nonsense.
The Electoral College is based upon congressional seats.
Right.
Congressional seats are based upon total population, citizen or otherwise.
Right.
So if an illegal immigrant moves into a state, they are counted in the census, and a congressional seat is apportioned to that state, which then gets an electoral vote based on the amount of people.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
So we don't do a popular vote for the president. That means if you have, I think California in 2016 got one additional vote based on their total illegal immigrant population, one extra electoral college vote.
Really?
So while they don't actually vote by going out and voting, that's not how the presidential election works. Their presence in the state gives congressional federal power to that state to make those votes.
Interesting. So they make states where there's like borderline states, or where there's states where they're, it could swing one way or the other. And they make those more accessible to illegal aliens. Thus, they get additional seats.
It takes 10 years.
Votes.
It takes the census, which I believe is every 10 years, right? I don't know which states they're doing. I'm not saying there's a conspiracy to do it, but it is true that if you look at the illegal immigrant population per state, you can calculate how many electoral votes they'll get.
They're piling into Texas.
Oh, yeah.
They're piling into Texas.
But where are they piling? If they pile into urban centers, then what will happen is, say, Austin will have to expand and produce a couple more districts, a couple more congressional seats. Then Texas will get more electoral votes. It won't give them the power to turn Texas necessarily into a blue state for Texas itself, but it will give them extra electoral votes, which could make Texas a blue presidential state.
See, here's the thing. Most people have no idea about this stuff. Most people are just, it's not willful ignorance. It's almost they're overwhelmed by just the sheer amount of data, the sheer amount of information that you must have to have in order to make an informed decision. I mean, when you're going into the voting booth, how many people really know who the fuck these Congress people are? How many people really know who's running for Senate? How many people really are aware? It's so few.
In, I think, New Hampshire, a trans Satanist anarchist won the Republican primary for sheriff to prove a point that people voted based on D or R and not on the candidate.
Find that. We need to find that.
Trans Satanist anarchist sheriff.
Where?
I think New Hampshire, but you can.
There's 18 people in New Hampshire. They don't know what the fuck they're doing. They're all drunk.
They went in and they saw Republican and they checked up the box and just voted for it. I also think the anarchists may have been running unopposed, so people were just like, "You get my vote." But when they found out who they voted for, they got really, really mad. Not everybody, but some people were like, "Here we go."
Lost bid.
So what's next for the trans satanic anarchist who lost her bid for Cheshire County Sheriff?
It was the primary that she won.
Wow.
I believe.
Well-
Yeah. Okay, there you go.
Look
at that, more than 4,000.
Anti-police Satanist runs for sheriff as Republican in New Hampshire.
4,200 Republicans.
Is that a gun
voted.
on her hip?
Probably.
Yeah. Looks like it.
Yeah,
Yep.
definitely. A magazine?
Yeah. No, it's concealed carry.
I dig it. I love it.
What
New
the
Hampshire with these.
fuck? Jesus Christ. Hold on, stop. Aria DiMezio, a transgender woman in her early 30s, has become a minor celebrity and the target of online attacks, vandalism, including homophobic slurs spray painted on her car, and a write-in campaign to weaken her chances. Wow.
The lone Republican candidate for Cheshire County Sheriff in September's primary. Most voters blindly checked the box next to her name.
She believes.
Right,
Most
right.
voters blindly checked the box next to her name. She only registered as a Republican at the last second after concluding her bid to get on the ballot as a Libertarian. Her preferred party would have required gathering signatures amid the coronavirus pandemic. Wow.
I love it. Now that is culture jamming. That is a statement right there.
It's pretty wild, man.
New Hampshire's a crazy fun place, I got to say, man.
Live free or die.
And the Free State Project?
Yeah.
They're winning.
There's just not a lot of people up there. That's also where Ghislaine was hiding in the woods.
Okay, that's kind of fucked up.
When they found her. Well, I mean, is it? It's just woods. It's a lot of woods up
Her
there.
trial just started this week.
What's going on with that?
They're picking
How have
jury
they not
today.
killed her?
Well,
Seems like they should have killed her.
Yeah.
Like,
Good
I
protection,
mean,
right?
I don't think they should, but seems like
not
they
should.
Right.
I mean,
would
like
want
the
to.
people that killed Epstein, which they did.
I read they're going to name high-profile people, supposedly.
Oh shit.
Whoa, shit.
Yeah.
I wonder if Gates goes down. You know, if this like vaccine injury thing gets really out of hand, and if this smallpox thing leads to something, or if there's any inkling whatsoever that some people who have financial motives want more people to get vaccinated, or want people to get vaccinated that don't need it, or if there's any kind of discussion about this, it'd be interesting to see if they decide to throw someone high profile under the bus to cover up their tracks.
You see Fauci shaking when he was being questioned by Rand Paul.
Yeah.
I mean, this is remarkable to me that Rand Paul holds up the study
Yeah.
that says chimeric hybrid viruses manufactured and funded by the NIH, NIAID, and Fauci is like, we did not do that. And it's like,
well,
how?
The NIH has admitted they funded gain-of-function research, and then Fauci tries to change the definition of what gain-of-function means, and that's what he's doing while Rand Paul is questioning. But Rand Paul, who is actually a doctor, and that's the problem. He understands these things.
Yeah.
It's like, but Fauci, that was the first time where he didn't seem arrogant when he was being questioned. It seemed like he was in trouble.
His
the
hand.
first time. Well, he's
Shaking.
old. He's 80.
For
His
sure,
hand might
but-
shake all the time.
I mean, and that's
But
true
it's
because
the way he's talking, though, is
Right.
very different. When Rand Paul said, "Are you finally willing to admit, that you were not telling the truth and that you did fund gain-of-function research?" And he was trying to say the definitions as defined, like he just tries to skirt around what it is. It's almost like the term gain-of-function is the real problem. What he maybe should have said is, did you fund the enhancement of virus research? Did you fund research that made viruses more contagious, more virulent, and more susceptible to the human population? They would have had to say yes to that.
you can one-up it and say, did you fund research on coronaviruses that originated in bats in China to make them infect lung cells?
Yeah.
And the answer
And
is
the answer
yes.
is yes.
And then COVID-19 comes
Right.
from where and does what?
Right, it does that. The problem is the term gain of function, which a lot of people don't know. And then, Francis Collins, who's the head of the NIH, was on the Lex Friedman podcast and just said a bunch of shit that's not true.
Yeah,
But
I saw that.
It was really fucked to watch. One of the things that he said was not true was he said that pro wrestler, that what the fuck is the guy's name? I forget his name. Big fucking stud of a man. And he was talking about the guy like he almost died. Did not almost die. Said he had mild symptoms.
Wow.
Specifically from him. So this guy is just a propagandist. And
How
he
does
was,
Lex allow that?
Oh man, but Lex is too nice.
Yeah.
You know, in those kind of situations, like Lex is fantastic when he's interviewing people about their field of study and asking them questions about, you know, their research or whatever. But when it comes to catching someone in a lie, you got to be someone who can go stop.
Yeah.
And, you know, that's what I had to do with Sanjay Gupta, right? These kind of conversations, these uncomfortable conversations, that's not Lex's strong point. Lex is a sweetheart of a guy. And he's allowing people to just express themselves. But then in the comments, people were furious. And then the analysis by experts, people were much more furious. Because they're like, there's so many things that this man said that are provably untrue.
It sounds
including
familiar.
his defense of Fauci. Like the way he was defending Fauci, saying, you know, that Fauci's done nothing wrong, that it's all political attacks on him. No, this is not. Rand Paul is not making a political attack on him. He's saying very specifically, you have led people, you have led them to believe that there was no gain-of-function research going on when the NIH has said, yes, we did gain-of-function research. The NIH has finally admitted it.
Yeah.
Fauci still won't. But his tone and demeanor are very different now than they were
They
before.
did try walking it back, though. They issued this letter where it was like, we did these things we're accused of. And then once the news broke, like, wow, they actually admit it. They were like, actually, we're going to say what Fauci said. Definition's different.
Oh, they did? Again?
Something like that. They tried walking it back or something.
Yeah, the definitions are so fucking squirrely. It's like you're just doing word jujitsu.
What is
Like,
it
I know
with
what
white
you're doing.
supremacists? It's the same thing, you know?
That's way worse because that's just clearly deceptive.
I loved when Fauci was answering the question about gain of function. It was like the best way I can explain it is Rand Paul goes, Dr. Fauci, did you put a door on the building? And Fauci goes, we did not put a door on the building. It's simply a large piece of wood with a knob that when you turn the door, the object will open up, allowing you to pass through.
Definition is not a door. Yeah.
It's more like a wall that moves when you turn a knob.
But there's a video of him talking about people catching AIDS, just being in the house with people that have AIDS from the
I saw that.
1980s. Like
That's
he's
right.
always been a fear monger. He's always been. I mean, if you're a guy who is the head expert in infectious diseases, I guess you have to think of what's the worst case scenario. The worst case scenario would be that AIDS would spread through the house just by people breathing on each other. So that's what he was saying, but it was
That's
not
right.
true. But then the argument for him is like, hey, this happens all the time in science, and they have to make corrections. And this is called following the data, and that's actually showing that science is correct, that science is working. Because the conclusions change based upon the data.
And that's what he said. He said, if you're attacking me, they're really attacking the science.
Well, you use the third person. That's a problem.
When they're attacking Fauci?
When you're attacking Anthony Fauci, you're really attacking science.
Now, he's got in his office a big portrait of himself.
That's not good either.
It's not good. It's not good. You know, it's like it's one thing if, you know, there's a big Joe Rogan Experience sign right in front of me, but we're doing a show. People are going to see the branding. It's another thing to work in your own office with a big portrait of yourself right in front of you.
Maybe someone gave it to him as a gift. Maybe his wife gave it to him. He wants to have it in his office.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Somebody sent a drawing of us on our show, and I thought about that. Like, well, what am I supposed to do? Like,
Burn
destroy it, smash it, throw it in the garbage.
Burn it in an online live video.
Here's my favorite Fauci arc. He goes on TV, I think it was CNN, and he's talking about stuff like normal, and they ask him, now, Dr. Fauci, you say people should wear masks, but wouldn't it make sense if people wore 2 masks because that would be more effective? And he goes, oh, yeah, it's common sense that 2 masks would be more effective. And then he goes on TV a few days later, and they were like, so you advised people to wear 2 masks. And he goes, I did not. There is nothing saying to wear 2 masks. And then a few days later, the CDC comes out and says people should wear 2 masks. I feel like a lot of this advice came from just like
They abandoned
winging
the
it.
2 mask thing, though. Notice that?
They did what?
Silently abandoned the 2 mask thing.
It's not yet right. It's gone.
It's gone. But there were so many dorks that were wearing 2 masks. They wanted to show that they were compliant. So they'd have the surgical mask underneath the cloth mask and showing everyone that they're on board with the science.
To be fair, they also abandoned the 2 vax thing. You know, it used to be like get 2 shots and you are good, and now it's get 3 shots. And
well, that's what Europe is saying. You know, in Israel was the first place to not count you as fully vaccinated unless you have your booster. And now they're doing that in other states, and they're talking about doing that in the UK.
They did.
They're saying it in England.
In the UK, in order to get your COVID passport like formalized, it's 3 shots now.
Oh my God.
New York City just announced they opened up boosters to everyone. 18 plus.
Right, but are they enforcing it in terms of like, New York City has a vaccination mandate where you have to have a vaccine in order to go into restaurants and bars and what have you, and gyms, I believe, which is it's just an attack on business. And it's also an attack on minorities, because one of the things about vaccines is the highest percentage of people that are non-vaccinated are African Americans.
Now, that's actually like a critical race argument.
Yeah.
And it's funny that the critical race, groups aren't actually bringing that up.
Yeah, well, some of them are. Black Lives Matter are.
That's right, and they marched with Trump supporters.
Yeah.
There were a few instances of that, and it's funny how the media doesn't know how to address this happening.
Well, I mean, the African American community has a long history of distrust in the medical institution, going back to the Tuskegee experiment and a bunch of other shit.
Dark shit.
Yeah, dark shit. Like they're right, and it's funny. Like when African American celebrities talk about vaccines, except athletes, like Charlemagne the God, and he had like a conversation about it. He was like, like I don't trust it. Like, show me that you care about the black community. Show me you care about African American communities, and then I'll entertain this. Until then, why would I do that?
Kyrie Irving.
People just let him go. Yeah, but they attacked him, right? They attacked Kyrie Irving. Like, even Chris Rock was calling him a dumb motherfucker, which is hilarious because Chris Rock got vaccinated and then got COVID and was hospitalized. Meanwhile, there's a lot of people that weren't. It's like, how much of a protection did it provide you at a certain point in time? Because I think he got the J&J, and, after 6-7 months, or whatever it's been, that's not doing much for you.
It feels like they're trying to stuff us into the matrix because it's really hard to talk about the stuff, even in,
Well, thank God we have podcasts. This is the thing, that this is happening at the same time that podcasts happen. And not all podcasts, because Brett Weinstein and Heather Heying, their podcast has been demonetized for that very reason. And those folks are actual evolutionary biologists and biologists that are talking to science experts, and they're very careful with their words. Yeah. They're very careful with, they're not like us, we're just talking shit off the top of our head and wrong about a lot of things. These are actual experts, actual scholars. And when they discuss these things, they get demonetized, and some episodes actually get removed, depending upon who you are and what you talk about. If you have certain subjects get discussed that they decide are, encouraging vaccine hesitancy or whatever, they just remove them.
This is the crazy thing, too. I consider myself to be a rule lawyer for these social media platforms, trying to make sure we figure out how you navigate a minefield. And so one of the things that's important, too, is the rules for like why Brett Weinstein gets a strike. You can't advocate for ivermectin. And they also say you must inform, if you're talking about ivermectin, it's not FDA approved, and certain things like that. But it's hard to know because they enforce it arbitrarily. So, I often just tell people, and I think it's true, I don't know about this stuff. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. I certainly understand that if there are a lot of studies, and there are, talking about the efficacy of ivermectin, we should be allowed to have a conversation about it and give our opinions. I think it's also fair to say I'm not going to recommend anything to you.
I had Peter T. on my podcast, who's a doctor, and one of the things that he said, I don't like when information is being withheld. I don't like when they're trying to establish a narrative. He goes, all the information should be on the table. The information that shows what the vaccine does that's good, the information that shows where it wanes, the information that shows vaccine injuries, all those things should be on the table, and we should analyze all those things. But that's not what the case is. It's very difficult when someone has a vaccine injury to even find a story on them in Google.
Right.
You have to go to DuckDuckGo. I found that over and over and over again.
That scares me.
It's weird. It's curating information. It's like they're deciding what the narrative is based on what they think you should be allowed to have access to. So it's not the actual, when you're researching that information and you're saying, well, I want to find out what's going on, you're not getting the full story. You're only getting the story that they want to provide you.
It's like MSNBC, they select bits and, pieces to only show one narrative. I suppose you could say the same thing for a lot of what Fox News does when you get these. I think Matt Taibbi has a great book. I think it's called Hate Inc., where it discusses.
It's fantastic. Yeah, it's got Rachel Maddow and Bill O'Reilly on the cover.
Right.
And he's basically made, I think Bill O'Reilly's on the cover, but he made the argument in another article that Rachel Maddow is Bill O'Reilly. And she's another one. She's like, You know, she doubled down on that fake Rolling Stone article about people having horse dewormer overdoses, and they were overwhelming the hospital in Oklahoma to the point where gunshot victims were not allowed to get into the emergency room. A fucking complete fabrication. No research on it whatsoever. Just total horseshit. She not only did she tweet about it, but then she doubled down and defended her tweet based on, I think, calls to the Poison Control Center, which doesn't mean jack shit. Here's the call for the Poison Control Center. Hey, I just took ivermectin. I thought it was a 6 milligram tablet. It turns out it was 12, and I took 2 of them. Am I okay? That's a call to the Poison
You're
Control.
fine.
Yeah, but what Peter Attia said on my podcast the other day, the one that came out today, he said the sheer number of people who have taken ivermectin is so overwhelming. There's been more than 4 billion doses handed out. And the amount of people that have actually had adverse injuries or things, it's like 20.
Yeah.
Out of 4 billion people, I forget what the actual number is. It might be 28 or whatever the fuck it is. It might be 8. Whatever it is. It's a very, very small number in comparison to the 4 billion people.
I don't understand how, Rachel Maddow, she did the Russiagate stuff for years.
Yeah.
It's been fake for a long time. But how do you as a viewer of MSNBC watching her show be lied to so often but not eventually realize you're being lied to?
What happens to those people? Do you think they know they're lying? Do you think they say something because they know they can say it, and if they do say it, then it helps their party because it makes the other party look like they're corrupt and they're criminals and they're in collusion with the Russians?
I wish I could read minds, man.
I wish I could too. I wish I knew here's one thing about your show and one thing about my show. There's no one fucking telling us what to say. And I think that drives people crazy. I really do. But in that, whether you think I'm a moron or you're a moron or we're right or we're wrong, at least you know that if I'm saying something, it's because I've read some things, I've talked to some people, this is what I've seen, this is what I've read, here's my opinion. That's it. There's no fucking voice on high that's showing up with a clipboard and has a bunch of notes of things that I'm going to discuss, talking points on the show.
There are some issues, though.
Do they have those? That's the question. I want to know.
I think...
Like the Chris Cuomo thing about rioting. Who says they have to be peaceful protests?
Yeah.
Did somebody say that to him? Like, how does that work?
Someone told me that Fox does have some certain subject is like, don't bring it up, it's off limits.
Really?
Yeah, and I think it's ivermectin. yeah. But I, if I could, it's something someone told me in passing when talking about the network. Because I believe Fox does have a vaccine mandate, but it's not like the same kind of vaccine mandate. It's something like get tested rarely or something like that.
Well, that was the other thing about Biden's mandate, was that if you weren't vaccinated, you had to be subject to, I think it was weekly tests.
Yeah.
Which I think people should be subject to anyway. If you're working in an environment where you could possibly spread a disease that really can fuck people up, 2 things should be taken into consideration. 1, you should have a treatment plan available to the people who work for you. That's what I do. When something happens with someone that I know or someone who's working here, now we have options. Like when it first started happening, like when Jamie got sick over a year ago, we didn't know shit. Like, what do you do? Jamie just kind of laid low and got lucky that he had a mild case. But now we have pieces in motion. We have information to work with, and we have experience. We've had a bunch of people had COVID, and we have some positive results based on the medications that I recommended to you. I also recommended to Aaron Rodgers. I mean, we have a medical team that we talk to that gives us, and it works. It fucking works.
But
but hold on. If you are a person that has an office and you employ 100 people or whatever, it makes sense to just test people. We test everyone here every day. And everyone here's had COVID. Everyone.
How much does it cost?
Not much. It's like $20 a test. It's not expensive, man.
I guess, I'm not a fan of medical mandates. Tests are certainly a lower...
It's not a mandate to test people.
No, you said everyone should be getting tested anyway.
It's just smart. It's a great service to provide to your employees. If they show up for work, and like there's a case at Vulcan the other day, the comedy club that we perform at. One guy showed up and he had a headache, and they said, hey, What do you mean you got a headache? Like, what's going on? He's like, oh, I just feel real tired. I got a headache. And he goes, listen, we're going to test you. They test him right away. He's got COVID. They send him home.
Amazing.
They prevented this guy from getting in there and spreading it to the audience, spreading it to the other employees. They caught it in its tracks. It was a wise, intelligent move if you have a business.
Agreed.
Right. Now, that's part of the mandate. That was part of Biden's mandate. That made sense.
But
here's a problem. The problem is when you say you either have to be vaccinated or test. The dumb thing about that is if you're vaccinated, you can fucking spread it. Like, we know that now. Right. I right now know 6 people that have been hospitalized that were vaccinated. 6.
We had 2 breakthrough cases in our outbreak.
I know more than 15 people that have had breakthrough cases.
Yeah.
I'm trying to keep track of it. It might be even closer to 20.
I like the idea of a business being like, we're going to provide tests for everybody. If you're feeling sick, just let us know. But I don't like the idea of the president going around the legislative branch to issue a rule to force all these people to do it.
No, that's not cool. But if you're a conscientious business owner and you have a bunch of people working in the office and you don't want someone to spread it to other people, it is not hard to just provide tests for people.
Yo, we had a COVID outbreak, and I'm not going to say the names of anybody or anything like that, but some people just didn't really care if they were sick and going to spread it to others.
Yeah.
And that's the big challenge. I feel like
the thing is people don't want to miss work and they don't want to miss money. That's what
right.
it is. And this was the thing about this kid that showed up at Vulcan.
Yo, they don't want to admit it, but I'm a lefty, man. I told everybody unlimited sick time, unlimited vacation. I believe in people who work here being passionate. So if you get sick, yo, do what you got to do.
But the thing is, some people don't want to admit that they have COVID.
That's right.
You know, they want to be in denial and they want to keep showing up at work.
And I just...
that's why I wonder about the whole asymptomatic transmission. Asymptomatic according to who?
Yeah. Like how you test for that and they find out someone's got it.
Right. Are you sure they were asymptomatic? Maybe they felt like shit and they're just in denial about it. You know?
That's right. And they're not saying anything.
I mean, there have been people that are asymptomatic. Like my real estate lady, she had no fucking symptoms at all. She got tested 3 times. She couldn't believe she had it. She goes, I never felt anything. Nothing happened.
I've heard that too.
Yeah.
And interestingly, also one of the things that threw us for a loop was, like I said, we had 4 negative tests when the COVID outbreak started.
Yeah.
So when I hear from everybody like 4 people got tested and said we're negative, but they were sick.
You know what's interesting about
shitty tests.
The real estate agent too? I think she shows no antibodies, which is really crazy. Yeah, a year after having COVID, I don't think her antibodies show up, which is wild. Because like she didn't have any symptoms. I wonder if when you don't have any symptoms and you test positive and for whatever reason the virus is just a low viral load on you or whatever it is, your body goes through it. It's enough to test positive but not enough to generate sufficient antibodies.
And then I guess not get sick again.
I don't know. Yeah. I mean, maybe you can get sick again. But she was around a bunch of other people that also got sick, like in a meeting. A large meeting, someone showed up sick. Again, same sort of deal. I just think regular testing is not a problem. It's not hard to do. I don't think it's infringing upon your rights. And I don't think it's like forcing you to, take some sort of a medical and be involved in some sort of a medical procedure or take medication that could be dangerous for you. It's just testing.
This is why, I go on rants periodically on my show where I'm like, why are we still having an argument about the science instead of the policy? Because if a business says we're going to give all of our employees vaccination whenever they want, ibuprofen, Tylenol, vitamins, we're going to test you if you want it, a free service provided to your employees, fucking awesome.
By the way, ibuprofen is fucking terrible for you.
Yeah.
That stuff is so bad for your gut.
That's right.
It's really bad for you. It causes so much inflammation. My friend Cam Haynes, who is he runs ultramarathons, he was taking ibuprofen every day, and he was telling me how much he was taking. I'm like, dude, that's a lot. And then I brought it up to Dr. Rhonda Patrick, and she sent me some studies that shows how much inflammation that stuff actually causes because it fucks with your gut bacteria.
Doesn't it?
So he stops taking it. He stops taking ibuprofen completely, and all the pain that he was taking ibuprofen for went away.
Wow.
When he stopped taking it. Taking that shit was causing inflammation. So taking these non-steroidal anti-inflammatories was actually fucking up his gut bacteria and fucking up his body so bad that it was causing pain.
Wow. Doesn't it, it prevents your body from producing the mucus lining in your stomach, something like that.
Something like that. I don't know. But
That's
he was
scary.
taking 800 milligrams a day. And I heard about that. I'm like, dude, that is so much. And then I started looking into it, and then I reached out to Rhonda, and Rhonda sent me all the studies and the details. I'm like, bro, you got to get off that shit right away.
I started doing keto several months ago.
Yeah.
And
Are you on keto right now?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
You get tested?
No.
Do you test your
well,
ketones?
I'll say that I've been following. I'm not a strict guy. I didn't do this because I was like, I didn't have a one day. It's like I'm going to do keto. I'm going to chug cream and all that stuff. I just decided sugar's gone. Like sugar is bad. I've known it's bad. Gluten, processed breads, all this stuff. I don't want to just have any more. And so I've been trying to eat more meat, more fats, and more vegetables. And so for the most part, I say keto. Colloquially, my carb count is near zero. Like it's very, very, very low. I try to do just like a very little bit because I'm not trying to do zero carb or anything like that. I'll just say, since cutting out the grains and the sugars, I felt infinitely better.
Yeah, it's terrible for you.
Yeah.
Grains and sugars, particularly gluten, pastas, bread, stuff like that, it's just terrible for inflammation. Sugar's terrible for you. All that stuff is just... It's just not good. And it's a staple of the American diet.
And it's remarkable when you start trying to avoid it, when you realize everything.
Yeah.
But I started eating a lot more beef too, which is something I've never really done. I used to eat a lot of chicken and fish,
You're
mostly
doing
chicken.
the lion diet?
Not really. I mean, I just felt
Jordan
like
Peterson diet?
No, none of that. The carnivore, the only beef or whatever.
Yeah, I did that for a month.
And you liked it, right?
Yeah, it was interesting. It gave me ferocious diarrhea for the first 2 weeks. Like ferocious, do not trust your butthole diarrhea.
Whoa.
Yeah, like yikes. But that went away, and when that went away, I lost a lot of weight. I lost a lot of body fat, but it definitely affected my workouts. I didn't have the same pep, but I did have a lot of mental clarity throughout the day. So for normal tasks, my energy levels were very consistent. But in terms of workout stuff, like if I was going to do rounds in the bag or like heavy lifting or running, anything that requires a lot of explosive activity, man, I just got tired quicker. Sure.
I was doing accidentally intermittent fasting. Not something I intended to do. I wasn't eating breakfast. So I'd wake up, I would work, and then once I finished with my morning show, I'm like, oh, it's 3 o'clock. I'll eat the one time for the day. But I would get we love getting hibachi, big old rice and chicken, and I'd pass out right afterwards. Right. I would just be groggy and fall asleep and then wake up like, oh, I got to get ready for the show because we do the nightly show, and I'm like chugging water trying to get back, and then I would do the show. And then when I started cutting that stuff out, I'm just energized all the time.
Yeah, it's this sugar crash, it's the carbohydrate crash, the insulin crash. And that's just a thing that happens when you eat a lot of carbs. But if I eat a lot of carbs now, and I essentially eat the same way, I mostly eat just vegetables and meat. That's most of my diet. I mean, occasionally I'll have sushi or have something that has rice in it, and occasionally I'll have pasta. If we get together, like a bunch of comics get together, and we have like a comedian's meal, we go to Red Ash, this is a fantastic restaurant in town. And we'll all just pig out and, bring plates of pasta and meatballs and lots of stuff with bread and gluten and garlic bread with bone marrow. It's fantastic.
Oh, bone marrow.
Oh, my God.
Amazing.
This Red Ash place is so good. And their bone marrow is off the charts. But anyway, I feel like dog shit afterwards. But while I'm doing it, I know what I'm doing. I'm doing it for fun. And we're all just having a bunch of laughs and getting a bunch of people together.
We're driving home. I'm with my buddy Luke Rakowski, and he's like, let's stop at Krispy Kreme. And I said, I will not touch a single Krispy Kreme, but boy, do I want to. And so we pull up, and Luke's like, I'm going to get a donut. And I was like, 5 dozen. No, for real. So Luke's like, okay, we'll get a dozen assorted. And then I'm like, two full glaze, two more full random. And he's like, okay, 5 dozen. And I bring him back to the house, and I look at him. It's incredible. I was like, I will not fall to temptation. The birthday cake Krispy Kreme, I was staring at it like wanted to eat it. I didn't do it.
Good.
Didn't
for
do it.
You.
I didn't do it.
I
passed
will
the
eat
test.
Them. I don't eat them very often, but I will eat them. My favorite one is the one that's it's got chocolate on the outside and cream on the inside. You know what that one?
I mean, that's a lot of them.
Chocolate glazed, cream filled, I think it's called.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness, that's a good donut.
But I said, I won't eat this, but all of the staff and all of our, our crew, they thoroughly enjoyed eating those donuts.
When I work out afterwards, though, my God, I feel so weak. Like when I have a donut like that, and then or a couple donuts like that, and then I go, okay, I got to burn this off, and then I'll go work out. Like everything is just like groggy and shitty. It's like I poured sand into the gears of my machine. It's like
that's it, man. Avocados, heavy cream, and I have this like MCT powder, and my mind is blown by. I should have done this sooner. You know, higher fat, and then when I'm exercising, it's just like I feel 10 years younger. I'm only 35, you know, but like it's like, man, the coordination, the energy, the clarity, feel great.
Yeah, most of what people are eating, especially in terms of bread and pasta, and eating so much of it is just not good for you. And it's not bad for you all the time. See, the thing about bread and pasta and even some simple sugars, it's actually not bad to have them right after exercise because it restores the glucose in the muscles, and it's not the worst thing right afterwards. But you just got to be cognizant of the impact of food the food has on your body. And I think as you get older, you start thinking about that stuff more and more.
You want to talk a little bit about NAD?
Sure.
So I take this NAD, right? And I told you just a moment ago how I'm like looking at my floor and I can see all the fibers of the carpet. It was like HD vision. That morning when I woke up, when I was like no longer sick, I put in my eyes weren't like cured of being nearsightedness. But I put in my contacts, and then I walk into my kitchen, and I could look out the window, instantly just see outside. And I felt like I could see every leaf, I could see every shade, every detail, I could see like more colors. It was the craziest experience. So my girlfriend also got the NAD stuff. And she's like, I don't notice anything. I think, it's not true. Tim's exaggerating. And then when we come in and we were talking, someone here said, people often say it's like HD vision right after you get it. And I was like, aha! Like that proves I'm right. That's the control. It was incredible. I felt.
Well, I think it has a different effect on different people because it doesn't do that to me either.
The other people who got it didn't say they felt exactly what I felt, but here's what I think.
Everybody feels better. Everybody
feels better to varying degrees. Like my girlfriend was saying, she was like, I don't really notice much. I've been staring at a computer screen for 5 years. Morning through night. I do the morning show, the night show. And I think what happened is my eyes are strained really bad.
Yeah.
And they weren't recovering because if every night I do, X damage and it can only recover Y, it's slowly degrading.
So tell me what your schedule is. You do a morning show and then you do a night show?
Yeah. So I wake up at around 7:20. I set my alarm for 7:20, but I always wake up at 7:19 and then turn it off. It's it's habit, I guess. And then at 8 o'clock, well, I already have a bunch of stories from the previous night that I, have in my phone or in my Slack group. So when I wake up in the morning, I immediately get on my phone and go through my news feed. I look at messages and notifications from people.
I'm just asking about like your show schedule.
Oh, yeah. I record a segment at 9 I publish at 10 a.m., 1 p.m., 4 p.m., and then we do a 2.5 hour recording.
Wait a minute. You publish 3 times a day? You do 3 podcasts a day?
So, yes.
Really?
Let me break it down.
Okay.
Last year, I was doing 6.
A day?
6 segments uploaded independently, followed by a 2.5 hour show. So I do 22 minutes to publish at 10, 22 minutes to publish at 1 p.m., 32 minutes to publish at 4 p.m., and then we're live for 2 hours, and then we do a half an hour private members-only segment for the website.
So when you're doing this, these different segments, is it essentially just you going over the news?
Yeah, the first 2 are more like a couple stories, and then I just monologue. Mm-hmm. The third is more like a bunch of stories that I break down and analyze, and then the IRL show from 8 to 10 p.m. is a live conversation.
Do you get overwhelmed by all that fucking information? Do you get overwhelmed by all those conversations? Like all that fucking news? And
I recorded my morning show before coming here. Now we're talking for X amount of hours, and I've got to do my 2.5 hours tonight as well. I've got a mental issue, defect where I talk too much. Whatever.
Yeah.
Last year, though, I was doing 6 segments and the live show. The reason
6 a day?
6 individual segments followed by
how long?
So there's 22, 22, 32, and then about 13, 13, 13.
And then your live show.
And then my live show.
And the live show, is it a recap of all these things with conversations?
Somewhat. There are a lot of so if I'm doing 6 segments, I have 6 base stories to go through, but there's like 50 stories a day.
Right.
And so with Timcast IRL, which is our live show, we kind of we flow.
Mm-hmm.
Not too dissimilar to this, but more regimented, where we know what the big story of the day is we want to lead with. So tonight it'll be, Rittenhouse stuff, obviously. But then depending on who our guest is.
What do you think's going to happen if Rittenhouse gets acquitted? You think they're going to riot?
Yes.
But why? Who's going to riot? This is the question. It's like, are they rioting because they have a nice excuse to riot? Is that what it is? Or are they rioting?
They're angry.
But what?
Well,
is it a refusal to admit the facts of the case? Is it a narrative that's already been projected to them by the mainstream news? And here's a question. If the mainstream news has been painting this very distorted perception of this case, and this is what has affected and influences these people to riot, how much responsibility do they have?
A lot.
Right?
I think there will be a riot, but I don't think it'll be comparable to the George Floyd riots. It's cold out. It's November, and weather.
It's not that cold.
But it does. If it rains, people don't come out.
Right.
So having I used to go on the ground all the time for this stuff, and we knew if there's rain, drop your expectation by 80% about who will be there. If there's
Right.
cold, the summers are when everyone's like,
Isn't that funny? It's convenience.
Fair weather ideology. But I'll tell you in my experience, what I would see for the most part with the riots are people who are angry at life. And they found a symbol to represent injustice.
Right. And that's, I think, that guy who is suicidal and those other guys, these Antifa guys. You're seeing it in a lot of those folks. They're without, for lack of a better term, they're fucking losers. Right? They're losers at life, and then they pile on to these causes, and they jump in, and they dye their hair pink, and they light schoolhouses on fire, whatever the fuck they do. They're doing this in partial because it gives them an opportunity to rage against the machine, to rage against the system, to rage against what they feel like they could describe as injustices, whether or not it's actually an injustice or not.
But much like the band, they've now begun to rage on behalf of the machine.
Yeah, fuck you, do what I tell you.
That's right. I think
the band, it's crazy, right?
Right, yeah. I went to a skate park. When I was a kid, I go to the skate park and people are spray painting, F the system, anarchy, whatever. I go to the skate park and what do I see? Black Lives Matter. And, I was looking at some kids and then I was like, isn't it weird that you've got basically like a pro-corporate, friendly, family-friendly corporate slogan?
Not really. It didn't originate as that. Corporations adopted it because it's profitable for them. But it's woke capitalism, right? And they do woke capitalism just to signal to the people that are buying their stuff, look, we added a rainbow to our poison. That's all it is.
But back in the day, when they say fuck the police spray painted in the skate park, Walmart's not selling fuck the police stuff. I mean, they might now maybe they had music and stuff that said that, I guess.
What is Rage Against the Machine doing now?
I don't even think are they still together?
I don't know.
They get back
They're
together?
performance shows. Well, they will be soon.
Does everybody have to be vaccinated at their shows?
I was actually trying to find that. I thought I had read that you do, but they haven't performed yet, so I don't know if that's true.
To be fair, though, it's the mandates, it's the law,
They're
it's the venues.
also older. You get older, you get scared. You want everybody to be vaccinated.
The Offspring really surprised me.
I tell you, I guarantee you that has something to do with the venues.
I'm not talking.
Because I have friends that are musicians.
I'm not talking about the Parada stuff. Sorry.
That are not vaccinated and they can't perform. They're getting kicked off tours. They can't go to places.
I just mean the guitarists. Like the singer and the guitarist, how they tweet and their behavior, and they're pro-establishment, they're pro-Democrat.
Really?
Maybe it's unfair to say that way, but they're very anti-Trump in the same vein.
Yeah, but fucking most people in show business are anti-Trump.
For sure.
Other than what's that guy's name from Stained?
Oh, Aaron Lewis. Yeah. Johnny
Don't tread on
Johnny
me
Rotten
tattooed on his neck. Yeah, Johnny Rotten was pro-Trump. Was hilarious.
He recently said it's surprising to see that the uptight moral twats were the left or something like that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that just shows you that really what you're dealing with is ideologies more than you're dealing with a real firm commitment to morals and ethics and an established sort of framework of behavior. Instead of that, it's like these ideologies come along and they're basically like cults. And like if you're on the left, you support this. And then when someone comes into power that you decide is a fascist, then they can justify all sorts of really nasty ways of communicating about that person, body shaming that person, attacking that person physically if you find them. They support violence if it suits their needs. And it just shows you what's really going on more than it being their thing. You all right?
I got a meme. I'm just getting a meme.
Oh, okay.
I wanted to read you a meme.
Okay, go ahead. Read
All
me a
right.
meme.
So there's a guy. You know the meme where the guy's slowly putting on clown makeup?
Yes.
It says, I am an anti-fascist that supports big pharma corporations teaming up with the federal government to finance and distribute a product that is made mandatory by law.
Yeah. Is that one of them double fold phones?
Yeah, it's amazing. I love it.
See that? Open
Look
it
at
up.
that. Boom.
Look at that. You got a little tablet now.
Yeah, no.
Like it?
When I first
You're
heard
one of
of
those anti-Apple people, huh?
No. I'm not a big fan of Apple, but I prefer Android for its customization and flexibility. Literally flexibility, haha. When that phone first came out, the Z Fold, I thought it was the stupidest thing I'd ever seen. However, I'm a tech guy, and I usually try out new tech to see what's up. And for somebody who does a lot of business and constantly has to deal with work issues, amazing.
Because you can kind of use it as a tablet.
Answering texts, phones, making phone calls with it when it's folded.
Can I see it like that?
Very easy.
And then the text is easy on the phone with it folded because your hand can hold it in one hand and easily text.
Like a normal phone.
Yeah.
But then what if someone says, hey, you forgot to order the thing for the show, and then I don't want to be dealing with typing and stuff, and so I open it up, I go to the site, and I got desktop. It's great.
Pretty amazing.
Watching movies.
Yeah, the size of it is amazing.
It's cool.
And it's cool and you don't have a case because you're a rebel.
And then I was swatting a bug, and I
ever
fell
drop
out of
it?
my pocket, and then it dropped.
Did you crack it?
You can feel on the bottom edge, the aluminum's all screwed up.
Oh.
Hey, it's aluminum, though, so it's fine.
Yeah.
It's great. I'm a fan. I thought it was fantastic. It's a great phone. It's
Yeah,
expensive, though. It's $2,000.
I wonder what the fuck's going to happen with phones in the future where they're going to be like these scrollable things where like, you have like a tube and you just pull it apart and it makes it larger or smaller depending upon what your needs are. It seems like this fold thing, the problem is that middle crease.
You don't
having that weird bump in the middle.
When you're playing videos and stuff, you don't really. It does fade, but it does fade out, but it is there. There's a funny image from like the early 1900s of what the future is going to be like, and one of the comics pictures is firefighters with mechanical wings flying and spraying a hose on a burning building. The interesting thing about how we perceive the future is that we can only perceive it based on what we already know.
Right.
So no one, well, actually, some people did predict cell phones, but for the most part, people, if you look at like Demolition Man, the movie, in the future, payphones had video screens. Whereas in reality, in the future, we just have the summation of human knowledge in a camera in our pocket.
Yeah.
We can't really predict the breakthroughs that'll happen and how we develop. So
No. I mean, even Star Trek didn't predict the internet.
They did predict tablets, though.
Yeah, they did.
That was amazing.
That was the second version of Star Trek, though, right?
Yeah, the next generation.
Yeah. They were walking around with tablets. Yeah,
Yep.
but that kind of makes sense, like a digital clipboard. Tablets kind of make sense, but
And the voice activation, computer.
yeah, computer, yeah.
So when I had my Alexa, I thought it would be funny because you can set it to activate when you say computer. They allow you to do that, and it was the biggest mistake I ever made.
Why?
Because people sometimes say the word computer, and then the thing wouldn't shut the fuck up.
Oh no.
I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm watching a movie, and then someone's like computer, and then it's like, boom, and then,
So it doesn't just have to say Alexa. You can say anything you want it to.
I think there's a few key
you say-
phrases you can program.
Can you call it fuckface? Hey, fuckface.
I don't know about
and
that.
Then just ask it, what's the weather?
What's the weather? You know what my problem with it is? It talks to me too much.
Oh.
I'll say, Alexa, what time, what's the weather? And it'll go, it is 67 degrees and sunny. By the way, did you know? And then I start yelling,
Hey,
shut the fuck up.
Fuck up, bitch.
Yeah, like I ask you a question, and you speak when spoken to.
Do you feel that this intrusion that technology has in your life, do you feel like there's obviously a great benefit that we all enjoy from the technological innovations, but do you feel like it intrudes in your life? Do you feel like it's gotten to the point where you want to take active measures to try to disconnect yourself in some way? No.
But I did just watch Almost Famous. You seen that movie?
Yeah.
1973. I never wanted to live in 1973 more.
Oh, it was about 1973. Yeah.
No phones.
Wow, that was
No social media.
Interesting movie, right? Because it was about a journalist that was following a guy who's a
rock band.
Yeah,
And he's 15.
The journalist is 15?
Yeah, I guess it's basically about Cameron Crowe writing for Rolling Stone.
Mm-hmm.
He's 15. He stumbles into this tour with this band.
What was the band supposed to be based on?
I don't think any real band. It was like an amalgam of like Led Zeppelin and stuff like that. It was called Stillwater. I just watched it on the plane flying out here, and I see this kid who's a journalist who's writing, taking notes down, and I was like, that world is gone. The mystery is gone.
Yeah.
You know, I remember when I was a kid, I'd be like, I'd call my friend's house, he wouldn't answer, so I'd cross the alley, down the street, go to his house, knock on the door, no answer, and I'd be like, he's gone, and I'd not see him.
Yeah.
Now we just know everything all the time, and it sucks.
Well, it's different.
Right, that's a better way to put it.
It's definitely different because there was a lot of limitations to living that way too. Like you have more information, you understand how the world works more. And I think back then, propaganda was so easy to pull off. It's
true.
so much more difficult to pull off now. It's so much more difficult to trick cynical people that have been burned before. And we just know too much about how the world works now.
It's true, but you know what I miss? I was thinking back to it's probably it's the 1200s, and there's some dude leaving his wood log cabin in the winter with a sword and a satchel, and he comes across a small but angry bear, and he scares it off, and the whole thing takes place in 20 seconds. He goes back to the local eatery with the other people, and he goes, "A great beast attacked me," and he describes this giant monster, and they draw a picture of a dragon, and there's intrigue, and there's mystery, and there's fear, but reading these stories about the unknown Mothman and Bigfoot, I want the mystery. I want the experience.
Oh, you like bullshit.
Absolutely, dude. I live in a world of facts and news stories and verifying, but I love the UFOs. I love the unknown. I want to discover, but it feels like, and this is partially a misplaced feeling, it feels like we live in a world where discovery is so much harder because information is so rapid through social media.
Yeah.
We learn it instantly. The truth is there's still a lot of things that are secret. There's still a lot of mystery that goes on and a lot to discover. But it's not the same as when I'm watching this movie in 1973 and you get this guy in the band. He stands on a garage tripping on acid and he goes, "I am a golden god." And they all scream and then he jumps in the pool.
Yeah.
Those things would just be on TikTok. It's just, we know it happens. And the worst part is it encourages kids to do stupider and crazier shit.
Right.
Instead of being this one magical moment that only, that people have seen, but you can then write down and then you can show people and say, here's the story. That seems so cool to me.
Well, there's something cool about mystery. There's something cool about the idea of this nostalgic time of living in a time where there was no cell phones and you could barely fax things. That's I
lived it.
Yeah.
You're older than I am, but I remember being a teenager and getting my first cell phone, Candy Bar Nokia, and being able to text people changed everything.
Yeah. But if you were back in that time in 1973 and someone showed you what it's like to live in 2021, you'd be like, fuck yeah, sign me up. Because this way is bullshit. This way with no internet and no HD video and no video on demand and no ability to talk to your car and say, navigate to Terry Black's barbecue. All that shit is amazing.
I just had some of that the
pretty
other
good.
day. It's amazing. Or being able to summon your car.
Yeah, all
the
those things
Teslas,
are
you're
incredible.
like, come to me.
Well, just a Tesla itself. I mean, I have the new one. I have the Plaid.
You got the Plaid?
Oh my God, it's a fucking spaceship.
Isn't it like?
The other one was a spaceship. I had the Model S before that, which was an amazing car, and this is the Model S Plaid. My lease is up, and so I got another one.
You leased it?
Yeah.
That's probably a better idea, I guess.
I guess
I
so.
bought. I think I have a Model 3. I'm not sure.
I don't even know if I leased it. I'm being honest with you. I think I did. But my point is that this new car is fucking insane. It's fucking insane. It goes 0 to 60 in 1.9 seconds. It's so fast. It doesn't make sense. The other one didn't make sense. The last one was 2.5 seconds. This is a full 6/10 of a second, somewhere in that range, faster, 0 to 60, which is so fast. And when I merge into traffic, it's effortless. It's like it time travels. It does it so silently. That's what's so crazy.
I got the stupidest motorcycle you could get.
What'd you get?
Have you heard of the Zero?
No.
I got the, and I'm not. I think it's a wonderful, wonderful, amazing thing. I'm saying it's stupid. It's the Zero SRS. It goes 0 to 60 in a couple seconds, but it is quiet, as quiet can be.
So it's electric?
It's an electric motorcycle.
So
they call it the Tesla of motorcycles.
But it's slower than my car.
Probably. I mean, it might be faster. I'm not sure. But the Plaid is like the cream of the crop, the top of the top. We're talking about $130K for that vehicle. This thing costs $20K. Now, here's the problem. It's
Goes
so
about 30
quiet.
miles.
Oh, no. It goes 100 and something.
Really?
And for a motorcycle, that's pretty good. And then you can hook it up to a supercharger. I think it's like a Type 2 charger or something like that. But it's a commuter vehicle. You're not going to go on road trips like, a chopper or something. But it's quiet. So when I'm driving, no one can hear me or see me.
So they don't know you're coming. So they could change lanes and run into you.
Exactly.
Especially people that are texting.
Exactly.
And that's the thing they say about motorcycles. Loud pipes save lives,
Yes.
Harleys and stuff like that. They're people are much more aware.
That's right. I talked to a bunch of motorcycle people, and they said the reason we do it loud is because people are going to hit you. And it's like a really high rate of people getting hit, and it's bullshit.
Yeah.
So when I pull up in front of my house on the zero, and everyone just goes, whoa, I didn't even hear you coming. Holy shit. It's like, imagine what the cars are thinking. When
But you're driving around in West Virginia where everybody's on pills.
And there's, opioids, man.
Do you ever see the Wild and Wonderful Whites of West Virginia?
No.
No? Oh, my God. You are in for a treat. It's one of the great documentaries of all time.
Oh,
I think it was, what's his face? Johnny...
Yeah, Dick House Productions.
What's his name?
Johnny Knoxville.
Johnny Knoxville.
Oh,
Johnny
okay.
Knoxville from Jackass. He produced it. And it's got Hank Williams III is in it. And it is a documentary about an outlaw family, the Whites of West Virginia.
Oh, cool. Oh, their name is White.
Oh, my God. It's so crazy. It is such a crazy place.
I love West Virginia, man.
Do you?
It's beautiful. You got constitutional carry. I mean, they say there's a lot of drugs, but I've seen none of it.
You got to go to the trailers. Go ask around.
I suppose, yeah. I've driven around and been deep into West Virginia. I've seen recreation. I've seen mountain climbing, kayaking, beautiful landscapes, forests, bicycle riding in these, and I just think it's beautiful. It's beautiful. It's inexpensive. Good people. They believe in liberty and personal responsibility. It's a great place.
Good restaurants?
Let me think. Yeah.
That's a no.
Well, I'm from Chicago, right? And this is the thing for me. I'm spoiled. I lived in New York. I lived in Chicago, and I can tell you about some great restaurants in the big cities.
Right.
The thing about West Virginia is we've got trailers on the side of the road, and some of the best brisket I've ever had is on the side of the road in Virginia. So I'm in the tri-state, but in Virginia there's this place. It's called Page's rest stop or something like that, and it's like a little farm stand, and they have a trailer with barbecue. It is massively thick cut, moist, delicious brisket, some of the best I've ever had. So when we're getting food, there's some local places. I'm not going to pretend it's the best in the world,
But it's good enough. That's what you're saying.
But it's pretty damn good.
But do you like the fact that it's a lower population density? People are nicer. That's all.
Yes.
That's one of the things that I really love about Texas, and particularly Austin. It's just not that big a city, and I think there's something that happens to people when you have cities that are overflowing with population, where people get annoyed at each other.
I agree. I would say I live in an area full of right-wing nut jobs. And I mean that somewhat.
But you're a far right podcaster, I heard.
So they say.
I read that online.
I think the definition of far right and far left has obviously changed to mean something.
It doesn't mean anything anymore.
Right.
They just say that if they want to discredit you. They don't say it because it means something.
I say right-wing nut job more as a joke because they're all Trump supporters.
Right.
This one guy's got a big banner, and it says, drain the swamp, bring your boots, and it points to D.C.
Yeah. There's a guy near my house that had a honk if you love Trump, and I would honk when I drove by just to make my kids angry. My daughter gets so mad. Stop doing it. Don't. I go, come on. It's the country. We're just supporting the country.
Does she think someone's going to see that you support Trump?
No, she doesn't think I support Trump. It's a joke. She thinks it's funny. She just thinks it's funny that I am honking while I'm passing by this car like he thinks, yeah, someone supports Trump. But she fucking, look, when she first came here and she went to school, the schools are a very left-wing leaning school, and we hate Trump. But it was interesting to me because I go, what do you hate about him? She goes, I think he's ugly and stupid. I go, okay. This is like how a 12-year-old thinks, Yeah. It's the kind of conversation I have with her. It's not like she understands his policies are detrimental to the country. And
well, what you should respond with to really help your daughter out is, I think Biden is ugly and stupid.
Well,
I'm kidding.
He's old and fucked up. What's your take on all that Hunter Biden stuff, man? That was one of the weirder things about censorship during the election, is the laptop thing. That laptop thing is an egregious example of censorship by the tech companies.
This is why they'll call me far right, because I've said if the Republicans win in 2022, they should immediately impeach Joe Biden. He should be impeached, convicted, removed, and I can tell you exactly why. What crimes? Well, abuse of power, violating the Constitution as it pertains to the eviction moratorium and the vaccine mandates, but we'll put that aside because it's very, very charged. How about we talk about the Burisma scandal, where there are a dozen active investigations by Viktor Shokin. I'm maybe a little bit too in the weeds on this one. The Ukrainian prosecutor is investigating an energy company in Ukraine called Burisma. Joe Biden's son is placed on the board questionably. Like, what does he have to do with energy companies? There's also a former CIA guy who's on the board, by the way. Joe Biden goes to Ukraine and personally meets with the president and says, if you want $1 billion in aid, fire the prosecutor. Now, he claims, and the mainstream story is that it's because the prosecutor wasn't investigating the corruption of a man named Mykola Zlochevsky, who founded Burisma. However, Zlochevsky, when Trump gets into power, flees, and when Biden comes back in, returns. Or it was something to that effect. It's been a long time since I've gone through the story. We have a quid pro quo definitively, as they stated it. So on that alone, I'd say impeach the guy. But with the Hunter Biden laptop, we're now getting images of Joe Biden meeting with Hunter and associates. We're now getting direct confirmation, or I should say at the very least, communications claiming that Hunter and Joe share bank accounts.
Yeah, that's weird, man.
But
Imagine sharing a bank account with your dad. And then there's also the transcripts that say that he had to kick up money to the big guy.
That's exactly it. I think regular people don't understand high-level finance like this, and I mean this with all due respect. I'm not trying to disparage, working-class people, but there's one reason why a politician would share a bank account with his son, and that politician, Joe Biden, flew his son to China on Air Force Two for a private equity deal with China, and upon arriving and having this meeting, they received a $5 million forgivable loan. Fact check me on all this stuff, guys. It's been a long time since
Forgivable loan, meaning you could just default on it?
Yeah. If there's a certain criteria met, you don't own the money anymore. Now, if that money goes into Hunter Biden's bank account, but Joe has access to it, you've got a tax problem right there, don't you? Look, I've tried to help out my family, and I've talked to my accountant and said, let me know to what extent I can provide for my family, my brother, sister, family, whatever. And my accountant's like, you got to pay taxes on all of it. There's no just buying stuff for somebody.
Right.
I'm like, then how does Hunter Biden share a bank account with his dad, take in millions of dollars? I wonder. Well, when you're that powerful, you don't got to worry about it.
The darkness of that is one thing, but the fact that the media covered it because they knew that it would be damaging to Biden's campaign, that's where things get scary. Because and when I say the media, it's not really, the media definitely didn't cover it, CNN definitely didn't cover it, but they censored people discussing it. And they censored the New York Post, one of the oldest newspapers in the country. They censored them because they had a legitimate news story from a legitimate newspaper about that laptop.
That's right. And Twitter said the reason was we won't allow hacked materials to be distributed. Sorry. Yeah. But when it comes to James O'Keefe's private legal communications, however the New York Times actually got it, Twitter's fine with that. That's different.
It's a fucking weird time, man.
I think
it's just these partisan people and these ideologically influenced people. And they're just so rigid in their ideologies, left or right.
But I don't think it has to do with politics in the true sense. I think it has to do with tribe.
Yeah, it's cult. It's cult-like thinking. That's why they're willing to pretend that Biden is a good president. I mean, the fact that he has a 38% approval rate is not shocking to me. The fact that 38% of them think he's doing a great job is terrifying.
Let's break that down. Let me start by asking a question. How would you rate the state of the economy?
It's not good, but there's a lot of factors. There's certainly the shipping crisis. There's certainly a shortage on a lot of things, like the manufacturing sector that has been shipped overseas is shown to be a huge problem when it comes to things like chips for cars, and there's a lot of things you can't buy right now that you used to be able to buy very easily and quickly.
Would you say fairly bad or very bad?
It's fairly bad. I would not say it's very bad. Very bad is like a Great Depression.
So Democrats in the majority believe the economy is actually good, fairly good.
Why?
I don't know.
What's their metric?
For what is good?
What are they basing it on?
So you can actually see, this is interesting, during Trump's presidency, the Democratic voters are polled, and this is from Civics, they believed that the economy was fairly good. Into the pandemic, as the economy got worse, Democrats started to feel the economy wasn't doing too well. So under Trump, it was, kind of fair. It was like, well, we don't like Trump, but the economy's doing all right. But then it tanks off through the pandemic. But when Biden gets elected, it spikes back up again. From now, it appears it's mostly tribal. Independent voters say the economy is fairly bad or very bad. Republicans say the economy is very bad or fairly bad. So when you take a look at polling, when you take a look, whether it's economic, whether it's Black Lives Matter, whether it's support for the president or the vice president, moderates and Republicans are very, very similar. But Democrats are mirror images of both. And I mean an inverted image. It's different. It's the other side. That says to me, you take a look at Virginia, you take the election, the Youngkin, you take a look at New Jersey. I think independent voters, actually, I'm going to pause real quick. Pew Research put out a political tribes study, and they found that there is the ambivalent right, where they categorize you or I. Then there's like the Democratic.
How am I ambivalent right? I'm left wing on everything except for gun control.
So they actually say the ambivalent right are not conservative, or they tend not to be. They're actually fairly progressive on a lot of issues, but critical of Democrats, opposing the establishment left makes you the opposite, I guess. But hold on, there's an important...
Centrist makes you right now.
That's true.
Yeah, that's just crazy.
But this is the point I wanted to make. They have a group called the stressed sideline, which is considered not left or right. However, the majority of those in what's considered the stressed sideline are center right. So when they plot them on a map from 0, then left, and 0, and then right, the middle of the road people who are not politically active are center right. What that means is moderates, independents, Republicans, liberty-minded individuals are probably leaning towards right-leaning politicians and ideas and away from Democrats. So I think it says a lot for what's to come, but I also think it says that Democrats are tribal in their positions.
What I'm hoping is that people realize the pitfall in being tribal, and then more and more people move to more of a kind of a centrist mentality, because that's where I think most people lie. Most people's beliefs are a conglomeration of both sides. Most people are in the center.
I agree.
Except you. You're far right.
Apparently.
I gotta wrap this up.
All right, man.
Tim Pool, you're the fucking man. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Good to see you healthy and fun to be on your podcast
Thanks for
yesterday.
helping my medical issues.
Well, I'm a doctor. I don't know. That was trending on Twitter, Dr. Joe Rogan. All right. Bye, everybody.